Chapter 1372. Under the deliberate publicity of the three universal civilizations, within a few days, the news of Black Star using the Sanctum revival to awaken many historical beyond grade has spread like wildfire. It spread throughout the troops stationed in the interception circle, instantly boosting their morale. Beyond grade as were not only high-level combatants, but they were also the representatives of individual experts. During the war, they were also one of the spiritual pillars of many soldiers. The more individuals there were in the army, the more confident the soldiers would be. The relevant information was also specially sent back to the Galactic Society, which also caused a large number of people and various organizations to be excited. In the past, a large number of galactic residents hated the Sanctum revival, thinking that it was the confidence of the beyond grade, a privileged class. However, now that most of the beyond grade had gone to resist foreign enemies and become the force to protect the Galactic Society, the attitude of these galactic residents changed. They were not stingy with their praise for the Sanctum revival and wished that more historical beyond grade would revive to protect their safety. Even during wartime, the distribution company of Wayne Cards did not miss the business opportunity and launched a new Revivers series of card packs. If there were some character summon cards and force cards that had a special relationship with each other on the field at the same time, it could even trigger the interaction function and have different reactions as a hidden Easter egg. The reactions of the various organizations were not as one-sided as the excitement of the public. They secretly evaluated the impact of this matter on themselves, especially the organizations that had ties with these historical beyond grade in a certain branch of the machinery faith. In the spacious hall of the temple, bishops wearing the mechanical priest robes of different factions gathered one after another and discussed in low voices. Their voices were filled with uncontrollable excitement. The original God has returned. We should worship his honorific name again. I never thought that one day I would be able to see the living Nilfgaard. The bishops were excited. As the original mechanical deity, Nilfgaard had a special status in the machinery faith. Because only by worshipping a living mechanical deity could the believers receive feedback, the dead mechanical deities only had a commemorative meaning left and became the old gods that were rarely mentioned. However, Nilfgaard was an exception. Every time they prayed, the believers of the machinery faith would chant his honorific name. This was a treatment that the other mechanical deities did not have. Now that Nilfgaard had come back to life, they could restore the worship. However, the machinery faith was a group of extremely realistic believers. Although Nilfgaard's position was special, it would not immediately shake Black Star's current position, unless he could prove that his machinery was stronger. Furthermore, the Sanctum revival was a product brought about by Black Star. All the archbishops present considered this point and reached a consensus. Although the meaning of the original God is different, he was brought back by Black Star. Nilfgaard's current position should not be above Black Star. That's right. It was Black Star who awakened the old gods one by one and revived the glory of the sect. In view of this, we should give Black Star a new honorific name to distinguish him from the other mechanical deities and give him a unique status. Since Nilfgaard is the original god, why don't we call Black Star the god of revival? It doesn't feel good. In my opinion, whether the old gods awaken or not is completely controlled by Black Star. Why don't we call him the Great Old Ones? Why does it feel a little weird? Let's change it. I think the title Undying Black, Holy Venerable of the Church, Guardian of the Door of the Old Gods, Arbiter of Life and Death is not bad. It's too long. This title of yours, those who don't know would think that it's for people. So what if it's long? Just say if it's nice or not. The group of archbishops argued fiercely over Black Star's new honorific name. Unable to convince each other, they even started to fight. They dismantled each other's oil pipes, and each other pulled out their piston pumps, hurting each other. In the central galaxy on a man-made habitable planet, A transport fleet with the logo of the Black Star Corps slowly sailed into the spaceport. Under the guidance of the port's smart robots, huge cuboid-shaped transport ships docked at different docks. The cabin doors opened one after another, and teams of Black Star Corps soldiers walked out. They formed a formation, stood in position, and took out their indicator lights to give orders. Then, a large number of Blue Star citizens walked out, forming long queues. They boarded the docks and headed to the arranged settlement. The army soldiers maintained order. Although there was a slight commotion in the crowd, it was still orderly. However, the constant movement of looking left and right exposed the nervousness and curiosity in most people's hearts. In the command room of the transport ship's bridge, Bennett looked down at the migrating crowd slowly moving on the docks with a complicated expression. At the beginning of the war, he responded to Black Star's call and organized a long-distance migration of all Blue Star citizens. At that time, it naturally caused a lot of opposition. Many people were not willing to migrate, and there was a lot of resistance when it was carried out. For most people, the mother planet was a feeling that was difficult to give up. No matter how far they wandered in the universe, the mother planet was the home of their soul. There were too many examples of people who were willing to live and die with their mother planet in the face of disaster. However, these problems were all forcefully suppressed by Bennett. Regardless of whether they were willing or not, they were all packed up and sent to the transport fleet. As the various star fields were undergoing a great migration, the efficiency of transportation was limited, and the transport fleet had been on the road for a long time. Along the way, Bennett had been emphasizing the necessity of doing so. He tried to reason with them and finally suppressed most of the dissatisfaction. Many people on planet Aquamarine had no choice but to accept the reality. Instead, they began to worry and fear about the future. Although this was only a temporary measure to take refuge, they were not sure if this would be the last time they saw their mother planet. If the World Tree successfully invaded, the flickering world would be the first to bear the brunt. The shattered star ring was adjacent to the flickering world, so it was very likely to become the second main battlefield. Perhaps one day, they would hear the news of their mother planet being destroyed from countless light years away. I wonder if I'll have the chance to go back after leaving my hometown this time. Bennett sighed softly with mixed feelings. This time, a faint female voice sounded beside him. "This is your new home. I'll escort you here. Thank you for your protection, Your Excellency Ames." Bennett turned around and thanked her. I'll leave this place to you. I'll leave Floating Dragon Island behind as your guard." Ames nodded casually and walked out of the cabin. She was not at the front lines at the moment. She originally had such thoughts, but Black Star had asked her to escort the Blue Star migration team, so she was delayed. In fact, Ames knew that this was Black Star's request to protect her in disguise. However, the escort journey would eventually be over, and it was time for her to head to the front lines. Furthermore, she wanted to see with her own eyes what kind of existence the nightmare that had forced Black Star to not stop for so many years was. In the Interception Circle base group, the revivers were under house arrest. In the vast starry sky, streams of light were constantly colliding, emitting shocking energy fluctuations. Shockingly, many beyond grade as were fighting with different revivers. Han Shao and his other companions who did not make a move stayed on the battleship to watch the battle. From time to time, they would use various means to offset the aftershock. The people who had just revived were not in their peak condition. During this period, they had been undergoing recovery training to get used to each other. As for the mechanics and mages who had been around for a long time, they still had to learn the new theories and technologies as much as possible in a short period of time, so they were very busy. Because the Beyond grade as guarding the Interception Circle had nothing to do, sparring with them became their current priority. They had been helping the revivers recover their combat strength and frequently exchanged pointers. Although most of the reviver's knowledge base was behind the times, there were also some lost skills that were brought back by the revivers. They were not stingy with teaching, which indirectly increased the average strength of the current beyond grade as. Among them, the one with the greatest increase in strength was Milizau's. He had finally gotten his wish to shrink his body size. He had only just learned the dragon language secret technique that the old ancestor had taught him, but he was already able to shrink his mothership-like body to about 300 meters long. Just this alone made him overjoyed, and his combat strength had increased significantly. According to him, as long as he mastered this secret technique, he would at most be able to shrink his dragon body to a length of more than 10 meters. His density would increase explosively, like the difference between stone and steel. In the past, the old dragon had high HP, average defense, and basically zero evasion. He was just a target. Now that he has completed this transformation, not only will his defense increase explosively, his evasion rate will also return to normal. His agility will increase greatly, and his combat strength will increase by half a level. Han Xiao guessed. After watching the sparring for a while, he lowered his head and opened the interface. He glanced at the forums. Thanks to the World Tree's beyond visual range tactic, the players had been carrying out suicide missions with extremely generous rewards. More than half of the IDs in the first tier on the level rankings had changed, and the players who were lucky enough to snatch the suicide missions had all gone up. Meanwhile, the current number 1 player was 6 levels higher than the number 1 player 2 months ago. He had already reached level 173, and he was only 7 levels away from the current version's upper limit of level 180. This leveling speed was considerably fast for players. However, only a few people managed to snatch the suicide missions, and this kind of good thing would disappear very soon. Han Xiao had already provided the blueprint for the special observation device, and the 3 universal civilizations had been manufacturing it non-stop. They had already sent over a batch of shells and were waiting for him to complete the most important core process. As long as they had the finished product of the detection device, the 3 universal civilizations would definitely use it in the battle very quickly and get rid of the World Tree's beyond visual range tactic in one go. This way, the players would only be able to participate in a large-scale spacetime splicing self-destruct operation at most, and they would not be able to enjoy this kind of high-quality compound fertilizer that stimulated growth in the future. I wonder what new plan the World Tree civilization will come up with after breaking this tactic. Speaking of which, Destiny's Child doesn't seem to have gained much recently? Han Xiao stroked his chin thoughtfully. According to Hella's report, the frequency of Destiny's Child taking effect had significantly decreased compared to the beginning. Furthermore, the information obtained from the surveillance was basically not too important, and it did not provide much help to the current situation. This sign was a signal in Han Xiao's eyes. Either the World Tree civilization felt that the effect of the foresight method was average and stopped using it on a large scale, or the World Tree civilization realized the reason for the leak of information and consciously took precautions. Did the World Tree notice something? It's faster than I expected. Han Xiao's eyes flashed. Although Destiny's Child's surveillance channel was hidden, through the analysis of the battle, he could always sense some of the actions of the 3 universal civilizations. It was as if he had received the news in advance, so he naturally suspected the possibility of the information being leaked. Although it was very difficult to find out the mechanism of Destiny's Child, through the relevant data screening, the World Tree had a high chance of discovering that the Foreseer was the source of the leak. The 3 universal civilizations could also do this, but their reaction speed would be slower. Han Xiao was never sure that Destiny's Child would be able to hide it from the World Tree forever. After all, this was not something that could not be solved. He would not believe that this low-risk intelligence channel would always be reliable, but the longer it could be hidden, the better. If the World Tree realizes this, It might deliberately use this intelligence channel at some point in time and use the Foreseer to send us misleading information. It seems like any information obtained from Destiny's Child in the future will have to be filtered first. Han Xiaoxin pondered. Just as he was thinking, the sparring in the field ended one after another. It was all about communication. Kasuyi, who had watched the entire process, was filled with emotions. As expected of the heroes of history, there are as many experts as there are clouds. They're all people with great luck. The concentration of luck outside is almost over the limit. It's more balanced here. Secret Master nodded. I'm relieved to see them alive and kicking. These people are the monuments of our civilization's evolution history. They are the essence accumulated from generation to generation. Olu, who was not far away, pretended to give pointers and acted like an old man. But we're still stronger. Manison glanced at him indifferently. Civilizations continued to develop, experience continued to be passed down, and skills were innovated generation after generation. Naturally, the present would not be inferior to the past. Currently, among the beyond grade as, the strength of the current generation was still stronger, especially with Black Star, who had broken the historical record. You guys are so noisy. Han Xiao looked at them helplessly. Just watch the battle. He did not know why these people were so dramatic. He retracted his gaze and turned to look at the many revivers who were returning to the battleship in groups. Suddenly, his eyes flickered and he had an idea. After hesitating for 2 seconds, Han Xiao raised his hand and opened the wide area communication channel. Seeing that you guys are having fun, my hands are a little itchy too. Who's interested in playing with me? I promise to be gentle. Chapter 1373. As soon as he said that, the many beyond grade as in the cabin could not help but look at him with surprised gazes. The many revivers who were boarding the ship were also stunned. What are you going to do? Kasuyi was surprised. It's just a spar. Why do you have such an expression? What's the fuss? Looking at everyone's expressions, Han Xiaoxin felt helpless. The current beyond grade as knew his abilities very well. Even if he wanted to spar with someone, not many people would be willing to pay attention to him. All of them were very smart and hid their abilities well. Furthermore, his status was special now, and his every move was being watched. It was easy for people to think too much, so it was not convenient for him to fight with his own people. However, the revivers who had just woken up did not have a deep enough impression of him. They might agree, and there might be a chance to trigger a beyond grade A challenge mission. It was worth a try. The expressions of the revivers changed, and they immediately thought of something else. As the president of the Beyond Grade A Association, Black Star actually took the initiative to invite them to a battle. He probably wanted to show them his might. Could it be that he was afraid that they would not be willing to be put under house arrest and would have some thoughts, so he wanted to beat them up and make them behave? The more they thought about it, the more the lively communication channel became silent, and there was an awkward silence. Seeing that no one spoke, Han Xiao coughed and asked, "Why are you all so reserved? Doesn't anyone want to play with me?" "Reserved my ass, you definitely have ulterior motives." Many beyond grade as rolled their eyes in their hearts. When they killed Aegon Vardnads, they had seen the tip of Black Star's strength. Although they had just woken up, they still cared about their reputation. Why would they be beaten up for no reason? If they could win against Black Star, they could increase their prestige, but they had not recovered to their peak state yet. Not many of them had the confidence to win against the most outstanding beyond grade A representative of the current generation in their current state. Although Nilfgaardi had agreed to spar with him in the future, he had not even gathered a mechanical army yet, so he had no intention of standing out. After waiting for more than 10 seconds, no one expressed their stance. They ignored Han Xiao together, and no one responded. Seeing that no one was speaking, Aurora broke the silence in the channel and said softly, Well, don't worry about getting hurt. I'll heal you. Hela snorted and took a few steps forward. If your hands are itchy, I'll spar with you. Why are you looking for someone else? Hearing this, Han Shao turned to look at the two sisters. Finally, someone redeemed my dignity. You two are still the ones who love me the most. Kasuyi laughed and tried to smooth things over. Okay, Black Star doesn't have any bad intentions. There's no need to be so vigilant. If you don't want to, then forget it. TSK, you're making it sound like I'm taking advantage of you. Forget it, let's talk about it when you're back in peak condition. When Han Shao saw that no one was responding to his invitation, he had no choice but to find a way out. He sighed in his heart that it was getting harder and harder to cut wool these days. Just as he was about to change the topic and ask everyone to disperse, a deep voice sounded in the channel. There's no need to wait until the future. I'll be your opponent. Han Zhao's eyes lit up. He hurriedly turned around and saw a burly creature with his fists clenched. Pugilist. He's here with iron head. The surrounding revivers turned their heads and stared at this guy in shock. Cure, you don't really think you're his match, do you? Someone could not help but ask. I still have this bit of self-awareness. However, facing difficulties is my martial path. If I don't dare to fight without any danger to my life, it will only damage my martial arts belief. If I meet an expert, I can use it to train myself. Cure looked at him coldly with a tenacious and unyielding attitude. His fighting spirit rose. Han Shao was King touched. As expected of a pugilist, he never disappointed him. Seeing this scene, many revivers were speechless. Knowing that Black Star might want to show his might, he still rushed forward. Only a silly pugilist would do such a thing. Everyone silently distanced themselves from Cure, afraid that they would be infected with the iron head disease. Since you've responded, let's spar. Han Shao could not wait to fly out of the cabin, afraid that this kid would go back on his word. This Cure was just an ordinary neutral beyond grade A. Although he was not an expert, he was still a beyond grade A. No matter how small the wool was, he could still take it. Anyway, he was not picky. Furthermore, ordinary beyond grade as did not mean that they did not have good abilities. After all, many of his molding talents were drawn from ordinary supers. Wait a minute, is there any prize for our spar? Cure asked again. What do you want? If I can beat you by 1 or 2 moves, you'll remove my house arrest and give me freedom, Cure said in a muffled voice. This time, even Han Shao, who knew the habits of pugilists, was a little surprised. Everyone was stunned on the spot. No way. Do you really think you can have an advantage against a peak beyond grade A? If you want to fight head-on, although we can criticize you in our hearts, we can still accept that you're using a strong enemy to train yourself. However, you can't really think that you have a chance to win, right? That's overestimating yourself. As if seeing the confusion of Han Shao and his other companions, Cure said with a deep voice, although the chances aren't high, setting a goal can stimulate my potential and unleash greater strength. The difference in strength between you and me is too great. I need to use all external factors to strengthen my combat strength. You're really pure. Han Shao did not know what to say. After a long time, he finally managed to squeeze out a sentence. Everyone returned to the spaceship to watch the battle, leaving the battlefield to the two of them. In the field, Cure's entire body was surging with flames. He was in a battle stance, facing Han Shao from afar. His aura was locked onto Han Shao, and he was ready. His pugilist aura was not bad, but the difference in strength was too great. Han Shao had already tried his best to sense it, but he really could not feel any sense of danger. In his eyes, this was like a little kitten baring its fangs at him. It was not fierce at all, but rather cute. Han Shao looked at the interface. The relevant Beyond Grade A challenge mission had successfully popped up. With so many Beyond Grade as watching the battle, the influence naturally reached the standard of triggering a mission. The mission format was still to persevere for a sufficient time. The reward of the highest level of ability draw required him to persevere for a total of 20 minutes. This request was naturally not difficult for him. On the contrary, he doubted that cure could last so long in his hands. So, the difficulty this time is how do I go easy on him for 20 minutes? Kakizi is good at this. I have to consider it. Han Zhao's face twitched slightly. Am I the one doing the challenge mission, or is Cure the one doing the challenge mission? I'm going. Cure's aura reached its peak. He suddenly let out a low roar, and the flames all over his body swelled. He pushed his palms forward, and endless shockwave bullets were thrown over like a yellow chain of light. Han Zhao's body did not move. A circle of floating cannons unfolded behind him like a light wheel behind his head. Dense beams of light shot out, destroying all the shockwave bullets midway. Seeing this, Cure's body swayed, and dozens of clones with flames suddenly charged toward Han Zhao from all directions. He did not approach but instead clasped his palms together to accumulate power. Han Zhao clenched his fists and punched to both sides. The powerful force field activated by the mechanical suit swept past, instantly destroying all the clones that were approaching rapidly. At this time, Cure had already completed his rapid accumulation. A dazzling pugilist aura lit up between his hands, and he suddenly pushed it forward. The bright yellow pugilist aura was wrapped in a sharp aura, and like a rapidly extending light blade, it quickly shot toward Han Zhao. Accompanied by the surging energy was Cure's loud shout that resounded through the communication channel. Ha! Galaxy Split Fist, third move. Hearing the name that was off the charts, Han Zhao only felt that the pugilist aura that was attacking him had become stronger. It was true. Shouting the name of the move while launching the attack was indeed a bonus. The more you shouted, the more points you would gain. The corners of Han Zhao's mouth twitched, and he suppressed the burning desire in his heart. He raised his hand slightly and summoned a psionic shield to block in front of him. The next moment, the bright yellow pugilist aura bombarded the blue psionic shield that was rippling like water waves, and a dazzling light wheel suddenly exploded. The shock wave spread out with a bang. When the shock wave dissipated, Han Zhao did not move. The psionic shield flickered a few times before stabilizing again. Cure's expression changed, and he became extremely serious. You actually took out such a tight defense. As expected, this move can't break through your defense. You're not simple. Han Zhao, I only took out a basic shield. When did it become a tight defense? Don't add drama for me. Seeing that Cure was about to continue, Han Zhao's face twitched. He raised his hand and opened the secondary dimensional army box. He did not have the heart to summon a large army to bully him, so he only pulled out an apostle weapon that was equipped with weapons all over its body. Heaven-suppressing banner, you deal with him. The heaven-suppressing banner nodded. It picked up the battle shield and heavy axe that it was born with and started shooting out. It dragged the tail flames of the thrusters as it charged straight for Cure. The man and machine immediately got entangled together and fought at close range. Han Zhao did not interfere. He just sat by the side and watched the heaven-suppressing banner fight Cure alone, silently counting the time. With the enhancement of his mechanical force, the current apostle weapon could already fight with high-level beyond grade and it would not be a problem for it to fight against ordinary beyond grade as alone. The two sides were locked in a fierce battle. Han Zhao finally waited until the 20 minutes were up. Seeing that the mission reward of the highest level showed that it could be completed, he could not wait to finish off his opponent, knocking Cure to the ground in 2 or 3 moves. With such a huge difference in strength, there was no suspense in this battle. Alright, that's enough. You should practice more. Who else is willing to spar with me? Han Zhao did not use too much strength, using control methods to suppress Cure until he could not move. He then turned to look at the spaceship that was watching the battle. The channel was silent. Many revivers curled their lips and did not respond. They had thought that Black Star would defeat Cure with lightning speed, but they had fought for 20 minutes. However, everyone knew that Black Star had purposely given Cure a chance to show off. To him, it was not even a warm-up. Many revivers thought about it and felt that they understood. Black Star most likely felt that the gap between him and Cure was too big, and defeating the other party in one go would not have any effect. Furthermore, it would seem that he had used too much strength and was bullying the weak. Therefore, he decided to use a different method to show off his strength, letting others see that he could fight an ordinary beyond grade A with an apostle weapon, indirectly revealing his strength. Some people felt that they had guessed the truth. Although they felt that they had seen through Black Star's scheme, they had to admit that Black Star's performance had indeed deepened their impression of him as unfathomable. A single apostle weapon could fight against an ordinary beyond grade A. So wouldn't Black Star have dozens of apostle weapons? Wouldn't that be equivalent to dozens of beyond grade As? It was truly terrifying. Since no one is interested in fighting again, let's go back. Han Shao waited for a while. Seeing that no one spoke, he knew that he could not wait for the next silly girl. He released his control over Cure and returned to the spaceship. Cure rubbed his sore shoulders, but he was not discouraged. Instead, he felt that after this wave of devastation, his endurance had increased, and his belief in martial arts had become stronger. His brain circuit was indeed different from that of ordinary people. With this interlude, everyone remained silent. They took the spaceship back to the main base and dispersed, returning to their respective areas. Han Shao changed into the king and teleported back to the army base in the flickering world. He found Fu Ding and Nero to freeload some luck before rubbing his palms and returning to his room, preparing to complete the mission. Fu Ding, Nero, Carrot, and the other potential officers who had not reached the beyond grade A realm were not sent to the front lines for the time being and were still being nurtured. Of course, he still had some selfish motives. If the beyond grade A seeds suffered large-scale casualties at the front lines, the gains would not make up for the losses. The current situation was not at the point where everyone's lives would be used to fill the gap. I hope I can draw something suitable this time. Although Cure is a little rash, he still has some good abilities. Han Shao had seen Cure's attributes before, and it was like a prize pool to him. He rubbed his hands and chose to complete the mission. The next moment, the interface showed that the mission was completed. Han Shao skipped the basic reward and looked at the notification at the bottom. You have received the reward. Draw one of Cure's abilities, skill/talent. Tip: Cure is a pugilist. Some of the available abilities have been automatically adjusted according to your class. Randomizing. Randomizing complete. Please choose one from the following 5 abilities as the reward. 1. Steel Hammer, First Form, Ability. Hit the target with your hard head. Plus 25% attack and plus 250% defense for the head temporarily. There is a chance to cause concussion or stun and other negative statuses to yourself or the enemy. Cooldown 14. 2. Crow Swarm Cannon Ability. In the next 5 seconds, plus 120% ranged attack speed, minus 30% attack, and every ranged attack has a 3 to 5% chance to obtain the tracking effect. Cooldown 35. 3. Unyielding Challenger, a talent. When facing enemies whose level is higher than yours, all your attributes will be increased by 3 to 15%, depending on the level difference between the two parties. 4. Combo Increase. Talent. Damage increases with the number of combo hits. Maximum increase is 12%. 5. Azure Dragon Bind Ability. Restrict the enemy's movements at close range, forcing both parties to be unable to move at the same time. The time taken for the target to break free depends on the difference in strength and endurance. Chapter 1374. Iron Head Hammer is only the first move? Is there another combo? Looking at the interface notification, Han Zhao's mouth twitched. He could not take his eyes off the first option. He had always thought that Iron Head was just an adjective for pugilist. He did not expect it to be a skill. Han Zhao looked down and saw all the other options. He pondered for a while and made his choice. These two talents were not bad, but he did not really want them. As his level increased, the effect of unyielding challenger would decrease. With his current level, there were not many chances for him to trigger it. Furthermore, he would not stop leveling up, so this talent would only become more and more useless. As for a combo increase, it was quite practical. He could easily max out his combo with his mechanical army, but the bonus was a little low. Now that he had a solid foundation, he did not lack this kind of passive talent. In comparison, Han Zhao wanted some abilities with special tactical effects that would be more effective in battle. Crow Swarm Cannon could increase the explosive power of focus fire far more than a combo increase. However, in Han Zhao's eyes, his damage was already not low. What he lacked was hit rate. Even if he wanted to focus fire, he had to hit his target. In fact, Han Zhao was not too desperate for Azure Dragon Bind. After all, the limit of triggering it at close range was quite high. Furthermore, both sides would not be able to move after using it. He was mainly interested in the rare ability of controlling the target for at least 2 seconds. This was only the effect of LV1. If he maxed it out, together with some of his talents that increased the level of his skills, the minimum control time would most likely be extended. It was worth a try. You have received new ability, Azure Dragon Bind. It sounds pretty good. It's much better than a random name like Iron Head Hammer. Han Zhao clicked his tongue and opened his attribute interface. He quickly found the new golden ability and invested his EXP to level it up. Although he was aiming for level 360 and did not want to waste his EXP, the cost of maxing out a skill would not affect his plan. Very quickly, Aged Bind went from LV1 to the maximum level of LV10. The minimum control time was now 2.6 seconds. At the same time, it provided additional strength and endurance, making it harder for the target to break free. After all, Han Zhao had not specifically added points to his strength attribute, so it was average at the same level. However, his endurance was still passable. Now, he was mainly adding points to wisdom and endurance. Every time he refreshed his universal treasure, a portion of it would be added to his endurance. Strong Lockdown Man finally has a skill enhancement. If he had this move before, the Subduing Tree King wouldn't have been able to break free so easily. Han Zhao rubbed his chest. Just as he was about to find someone to test this move on, his communicator suddenly rang. It was a call from Ames. She said that she wanted to come to the front line and asked Han Zhao to activate the king to pick her up. Seeing Ames's firm attitude, Han Zhao did not force her to stay behind. Instead, he took her back to the intercepting circle. Moreover, he could test out his new move with Ames and see how effective it was in actual combat. Central Galaxy, Desolate Universe Belt. A small fleet was slowly cruising through the boundless starry sky as if it was aimless. In the command room of the main ship, a group of operators wearing various types of armor were piloting the spaceship. They looked like a group of galactic pirates. On the command platform at the front stood a few guys with imposing auras. They were all wearing hooded robes to hide their figures. Due to the invasion of foreign enemies, the 3 Universal Civilizations armies have been sent to the various border star fields. The hinterland is empty, and a large number of galactic residents are hiding in the central galaxy. This is a good opportunity, a hooded man said softly. Hearing this, a small commotion appeared among the hooded men. The hooded man standing at the front let out a long sigh and slowly said, "Forget it. Let's not do it now." "Why? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Another person's tone was agitated and filled with confusion. If I say we won't move, then we won't move. The hooded man at the front raised his head slightly, revealing his face under the hood. It was the mysterious Pangan. This group of people was the group of Avengers who had left the Holy Covenant. Pangan, don't tell me you're feeling compassionate? A Beyond Grade A said coldly. You're retreating because of the invasion of foreign enemies? You're not willing to affect the so-called big picture? Don't forget that our goal is to take revenge on the three universal civilizations. That's what we want to do in the first place. The external enemies are our help, and there's no better time than now to destroy their rule. This gives us a chance to take advantage of them. Otherwise, do you really think we can shake the foundation of the three universal civilizations rule with just the few of us? Are you teaching me how to do things? Pangan's expression was also cold. This person was not afraid at all. He glared back and said with a deep voice, "Then tell me, why should we let go of this opportunity? If our paths are different, it's better to disband as soon as possible and do our own things." The others also focused their gazes on Pangan. Their civilization had been destroyed by the three universal civilizations in the exploration era, and they had a deep-rooted hatred. For revenge, they had already disregarded life and death. The invasion of the World Tree made them happy instead of shocked. They thought that the heavens were on their side. Pangan paused for a moment, took out a thick handmade cigarette, lit it, and took a puff. The smoke filled the air silently. "Speak," his companion asked coldly. Pangan glanced at him, tapped the cigarette ash, and slowly said, "The Great Migration should have been the time when the galactic pirates were rampant and active, but the armies of the various civilizations were escorting their citizens to the central galaxy to seek refuge, and there were fewer and fewer galactic residents wandering outside. This made it harder and harder for the galactic pirates to live. Not only did they not have any prey, but they were also wiped out by the military. What are you trying to say?" "What I'm saying is, even if we want to seize this opportunity to shake the rule of the three universal civilizations, we don't have enough manpower. Why don't we take this opportunity to integrate the galactic pirates and obtain enough armed forces? Otherwise, even if we go to the three universal civilizations to cause trouble now, we won't be able to cause much trouble." As he spoke, Pangan paused and calmly said, "Furthermore, if we obstruct the three universal civilizations' plan to resist the enemy at this juncture, Black Star will definitely come and kill us. Do you guys want to see him that much?" Hearing this, fear flashed through everyone's eyes and they stopped talking. Pangan glanced at them, smoked his cigarette, and stopped talking. This was both the truth and an excuse. To be fair, although the invasion of foreign enemies was a good opportunity to shake the three universal civilizations, Pangan did not want to use this opportunity. On one hand, it was because of the threat of Black Star, and on the other hand, it was because of the Holy Covenant. After all, this was the hometown of Oathkeeper and many other Holy Covenant companions. He had already owed the Holy Covenant a huge favor by being able to be reborn. At the same time, he had also obtained his freedom. Now that some of his old friends were fighting against foreign enemies, he did not want to drag them down at this time. Although he had decided to dedicate his life to revenge, he did not want to lose his brotherhood because of this. The invasion of foreign enemies might be the only chance to destroy the three universal civilizations, but Pangan did not regret giving up this path. He firmly believed that there were other ways. The three universal civilizations and the World Tree were still engaged in a tug-of-war at the front line. After a while, with the first batch of special observation devices, the stalemate between the two sides was finally broken. The over-the-horizon detection technology from the final civilization of another iteration broke through the disguises of the World Tree strongholds one after another. The densely packed camps were marked on the wide-area radar one after another. It was almost as if the entire map had been opened, and they had finally regained the initiative. The entire Interception Circle Command Center was greatly energized. They immediately organized a large number of players to form a spacetime splicing army, splitting into thousands of troops and heading toward all the camps, trying to clear out all the enemy strongholds in one go. The over-the-horizon camps that were guarding and helping each other were quickly destroyed. The strongholds hidden in the dark were caught off guard and destroyed one after another under the self-destructing charge of the fearless spacetime splicing army. A large number of nails that the World Tree had planted near the Interception Circle were pulled out one after another. After more than half a month of fierce battle, the World Tree finally gave up on the ineffective over-the-horizon camp tactic and no longer released new strongholds, allowing the three universal civilizations to clear the obstacles in the expansion of the Interception Circle and the Space Anchor Orbit. Without any obstructions, the stagnant expansion speed of the Space Anchor Orbit immediately thawed and pushed forward again, continuing to force the World Tree's jump point away from the Interception Circle. In the next few months, the frequency and intensity of the collisions between the two sides continued to increase, and the battle became more and more intense. During this period, the World Tree launched two more attacks. The size of the fleet was in the tens of billions, and two large-scale battles were triggered. These two battles were both army battles, and the World Tree did not send out any high-level combatants. It was purely to exhaust the three universal civilizations' forces. It seemed like before they found a way to restrain Aurora, the World Tree would no longer allow individuals to participate in the battle. Furthermore, the experts who had died in the previous battle had not all been revived, so they could not enter the battlefield. Although the World Tree had to consume resources to replenish its fleet and combat personnel, due to the characteristics of the World Tree itself, their resource utilization rate, resource development rate, resource regeneration speed, and resource reserves far exceeded the three universal civilizations. They had a huge advantage, and both sides could quickly increase their troop. The World Tree's plan was to exhaust the three universal civilizations' national strength. Many beyond grade as participated in these two large-scale battles. With Aurora taking care of them, coupled with the fact that the World Tree did not send any beyond grade as they were safe both times. No one died in battle for the time being. In the past few months, Han Shao had provided some of the war technology hidden in the first sanctum, which was manufactured in batches and allocated to many troops. It had a significant effect in the battle between the armies, reducing the losses of the three universal civilizations' fleets by a lot, and defeating the World Tree's army at a lower cost. Destiny's Child Surveillance Channel had also discovered the signs of mobilization for these two attacks in advance, allowing the three universal civilizations to be on guard and further reducing their losses. However, with the special over-the-horizon detection device provided by Han Shao, the surveillance range and strength of the three universal civilizations had undergone a qualitative change. They did not need Destiny's Child to discover most of the World Tree's movements near the Interception Circle. This important technology forced the three universal civilizations to change a portion of their strategic plans, and they no longer felt troubled because of their weakness in detection. Therefore, the three universal civilizations placed more importance on Han Shao. They wished that Han Shao could stay in the base and not participate in any battles, preventing him from encountering any risk. Black Star took out strategic technologies one after another as if they were free. Almost every one of them was qualified to be the trump card of an advanced civilization. This also shocked the research departments of the three parties. They only felt that Black Star's research ability alone was more impressive than their entire department, and they were in awe. However, a strong attack was a strong attack. Although the three universal civilizations had defeated two waves of attacks, the Interception Circle and the space-anchored orbit had been destroyed on a large scale during the advance of the World Tree Army, and their expansion had been indirectly restrained. Ever since the war broke out, the two sides had been facing each other in this meat grinder for more than half a year, constantly exhausting their forces. The World Tree had always been blocked outside, unable to break through the interception circle. It was as if they had finally exhausted their patience. Destiny's Child surveillance channel had captured important information, showing that the World Tree civilization was mobilizing troops in their territory, planning a new attack. This time, it was the World Tree's largest attack so far. The scale was even larger than the previous three combined. It had already exceeded 200 billion, and it was unknown how much longer it would take. With such a huge attack, even if the interception circle could repel the enemy like the previous 3 times, it would definitely be greatly damaged. The moment he received the news, Han Xiao informed the command center and held an emergency meeting. Chapter 1375. In the conference room of the command center, the highest commanders, the chiefs of the various branches, and the beyond grade as were gathered. On the tactical simulation table, a 3-dimensional star map of the intercepting circle floated. Simon stood beside it and kept fiddling with the star map. He used his fingers to draw tactical symbols and kept explaining the current situation. According to Black Star's intelligence, the World Tree has gathered a 200 billion super-large army this time and is suspected to be launching a general attack. This is the map of our various branches and the distribution of the wormhole support base stations. It can be seen that the area where our troops are currently mobilized the fastest is between A1075C and N0744J. If the World Tree attacks this line of defense, all of our main defense forces can gather and descend as quickly as possible. However, the gathering speed of the other lines of defense is slightly slower. This slight difference in time may become a breakthrough point, causing the World Tree to break through the first and second layers of defense with a huge number of troops. They will enter the strategic depth zone and the wormhole support base station distribution zone, threatening the third layer and the rest of the lines of defense. This will create a vicious cycle, and we will be in a passive position. The expressions of the upper echelons were solemn. The pressure of a 200 billion fleet was much higher than the previous 3 attacks. Any factor could become a breakthrough point for the other party. I think that the other party will not repeat the same mistake this time after experiencing the previous 3 failures. They will most likely change their attack method and will not immediately charge in. Our construction time is still too short. Not only does the World Tree want to break through the blockade, but it also wants to destroy our fortifications in one go. Only by removing the intercepting circle that we are constantly advancing can they stabilize the jump point and build a bridgehead to invade our territory. We need more reinforcements from the rear. It's best to increase the distance between the first 2 lines of defense and the rear lines of defense to prevent the other party from breaking through the blockade. The commanders of the troops expressed their opinions one after another, and the group discussed intensely. As for the beyond grade, they just sat by the side and listened, not participating at all. However, after the upper echelons discussed for a while, Simon turned around and asked Han Xiao, "Black Star, what do you think? You guys can decide on this matter. I have no objections." Han Xiao shook his head, indicating that professional matters should be done by professionals. However, he paused for a moment before adding, "However, there's a high chance that the World Tree has sensed the direction of the information leak. The authenticity of the information I obtained is doubtful, and it might be a trick deliberately released by the World Tree. This risk has to be considered." Simon took a deep breath. "I understand that, but even if we cannot confirm whether the intelligence is true or false, we have to be prepared to deal with a fleet of 200 billion. Even if there is only 1% or 1 in 1,000 chance that it is true, we have to be prepared. Otherwise, the consequences will be dire." "Indeed." Han Xiao nodded. If it was true and he did not take precautions in advance, there was an 80% chance that the World Tree would break through his defenses and kill him. Destiny's Child had also monitored the first 2 attacks. Han Xiao had also retained his suspicions, but in the end it was proven that the information was correct. However, this did not make him feel at ease. Instead, it made him even more vigilant. If the World Tree had deliberately revealed the information about the first two attacks to try to reduce their wariness, then it must be holding back a big move and sending out fake information at the critical moment. However, there was no way to know what the World Tree was planning. Fortunately, I got a new observation device from the First Sanctum and gave it to the three universal civilizations. The World Tree can't act secretly here like before. Any movement will be discovered. Han Xiaoxin thought to himself. Ever since the three universal civilizations applied the special over-the-horizon detection technology he had provided to the battle, their reliance on Destiny's Child's surveillance channel had decreased greatly. Even if the World Tree had any plans, it could not be carried out secretly, and the risk was greatly reduced. The meeting lasted for a long time before the commanders left with heavy hearts. Han Xiao and the others also left the meeting room and returned to their residence. On the way, Kasui squeezed through the crowd and came to Han Zhao's side. The World Tree did not send any high-level combatants in the first two attacks. This time, they suddenly launched an all-out attack. Do you think they have found a way to restrict Aurora? Han Xiao glanced at him. Before he could say anything, Sun Hunter jumped from Han Zhao's shoulder to Kasui's head and said in a muffled voice, they might be planning to ignore us high-level combatants and purely use their troops to attack the defense line. Ignore us? It's not impossible as long as they're willing to bear the risk of a local battle. After all, no matter how powerful we are, we won't be able to have a fundamental impact in a war of this scale. At most, we'll open up some opportunities, Kasui pondered. Seeing that the two of them were chatting, Han Xiao gave up on replying and turned to look at Ames. Why are you looking at me? Ames raised her brows. Are you afraid that the enemy will take out 200 billion fleets? Han Xiao asked casually. There's nothing to be afraid of. Ames shook her head. In the past few months, she had participated in the first two attacks of the World Tree and now had war experience. It's different this time. The World Tree might send out high-level combatants. You haven't participated in the first large-scale battle and haven't fought with the World Tree experts. They're very difficult to deal with. It's a good opportunity to broaden my horizons. Ames's expression was calm. Don't underestimate them. The intensity of a beyond Grade A battle is not something that can be compared to the previous two battles with conventional fleet. I suggest you follow Milizau's. Han Xiao pointed at the old dragon. Why should I follow him? Ames was curious. He's so big. If you hide on him, they won't be able to hit you. If necessary, you can even throw his body out with your force field to help you block the attack. Han Xiao shrugged. You know I can hear you, right? Milizau's incarnation could not help but turn around and look at him helplessly. I just want you to hear me. My nickname is the Dragon Emperor. It's reasonable for me to sit on you, right? Han Xiao curled his lips. These words sound familiar. Have you told me this before? Milizau snorted disapprovingly through his nostrils. Han Xiao spread his hands. Don't you think this strategy is very reliable? I don't think so at all. Furthermore, my body has already shrunk a lot, so I won't be used as a target by the enemy. This plan is definitely useless. Milizau's was very calm. A person who had successfully lost weight was so unyielding. Then recover your body size. You have such a huge body, but you don't protect your teammates. This is a waste. You're dreaming. Milizau's rolled his eyes and ignored Han Xiao. The group was not frightened by the possible large-scale battle and returned to their residence while chatting and laughing. Han Xiao closed the door. His smile quickly disappeared and he frowned slightly. He had a feeling that the World Tree was going to use high-level combatants this time, and the subduing Tree King should not have revived yet. There was probably a new Tree King coming this time. Among the 5 great Tree Kings, Only the subduing Tree King's ability was the simplest and most violent. The other Tree Kings were all flowery. No matter who it was, they would only be more difficult to deal with than the subduing Tree King. At the same time, in the flickering world, on a desolate planet in the Black Star Core territory, rumble, two blurry figures flashed across the desolate land like meteors, constantly colliding with each other. Every time, they were on the verge of exploding, creating intense shock waves and leaving huge craters on the ground. Suddenly, the two figures came to a halt, revealing their appearances. One was Lodhair, and the other was Carlet, who was receiving instruction. Lodhair spun the dagger with his fingers and kept it in the scabbard at his waist. Your strength has increased again. You can already withstand my current strength. In the next combat training, I will release more combat strength and continue to squeeze out your potential. Alright, I'll train hard. Carlet's fists collided with each other, causing sparks to fly. His face was filled with determination. He had applied to go to the front lines to fight against the enemies more than once, but he had always been rejected by Black Star. He knew that this was because Han Shao valued his potential and was giving him time to grow under the pressure at the front lines. Carrot understood that his most important task was to focus on training and grow to the point where he could go to the front lines to help Han Shao as soon as possible. Therefore, after the war broke out, he took the initiative to train every day. With this speed, it's only a matter of time before you become a beyond grade A. Although Lodhair said this, he was secretly muttering in his heart. During the days of training Carrot, he realized that Carrot's improvement was extraordinary. Furthermore, his growth speed did not slow down because of the increase in his strength. Instead, it became faster and faster. It was as if there was no bottleneck, and his improvement every day was visible to the naked eye. Lodhair was originally curious about why Han Shao valued Carrot, but now, he no longer had any doubts, only deep surprise. There's actually such a martial arts genius in this world? How did Black Star discover him? World Tree Territory, Tree King Palace. On the 5 thrones sat 2 figures. One was the Heart Tree King, and the other was the Fortitude Tree King, who was wrapped in heavy armor. Below the 2 Tree Kings stood many executive officers. Some of the people who had died in battle had already been revived. Release the information? It has already been displayed through the Foreseers, Tidrian replied with his head lowered. I hope their attention is all on this. Heart Tree King rubbed the armrest and nodded slowly. Tidrian continued, in the previous few attacks, we have already calculated the approximate structure of the interception circle, as well as the number of troops stationed and the limit of follow-up support. This time, we will increase our advantage in numbers and should be able to break through the interception circle in one go. At the very least, we will be able to clear their space anchor orbit. Hearing this, Heart Tree King casually nodded and did not have any intention of saying anything else. He waved his hand and let the executive officers leave. Very soon, only the 2 Tree Kings were left in the palace. Fortitude Tree King turned his head slightly and seemed to be looking at Heart Tree King from the corner of his eye hidden behind the mechanical suit's mask. You've already decided to take action personally. Is this your intention for urging me to reveal myself? Only I can deal with that recovery-type Esper easily, and that universal treasure can only unleash its greatest power in my hands. If I die there, you will be in charge of the matters here for the time being, Heart Tree King said calmly. How long until the subduing Tree King revives? Fortitude Tree King frowned. Although I water him every day, there's still some time. Heart Tree King waved his hand. Fortitude Tree King was silent for a while before saying with a deep voice, in that case, bring my lord's avatar, apostle weapons, and mechanical army over. You plan to save my life? If I let you live to preside over the matters here, I can continue to stay comfortably in the mother tree and absorb nutrients, Fortitude Tree King said coldly. Heart Tree King shook his head. The civilization this time is very strong. You will have to participate in the battle sooner or later. We'll talk about it when the time comes. After saying that, Fortitude Tree King's body merged into the tree crown throne and disappeared. Seeing this, Heart Tree King felt a little helpless. No matter how hard-working they were in the past, after being chosen as the Tree King, they would all become lazier and lazier. They would not move if they could, especially Fortitude Tree King, who was a mechanic. He still remembered that this guy was a research and development maniac before he became the Tree King. Now, not to mention research and development, he could not even be bothered to build machinery. In comparison, Heart Tree King preferred the Subduing Tree King. He could make him work with just a few words. He was simply a clear stream among the Tree Kings, the best tool in the eyes of the other four. End of chapter. Chapter 1376. After receiving news from Han Shao that the World Tree was suspected to be launching a new attack, the three universal civilizations began to prepare for war. Batches of standby troops stationed at the rear were mobilized, causing the number of troops in the interception circle to increase. Because Destiny's Child did not obtain any information about the World Tree's subsequent actions, the three universal civilizations could only be on guard and maintain the highest level of detection all day long. The generals of all levels were also tense and did not dare relax. It was like knowing that a knife would slash at them, but they did not know when the enemy would slash at them. As the interception circle was expanding, the wormhole support network had to be extended continuously. The three universal civilizations were not sure which area the World Tree would attack. In the blink of an eye, nearly a month had passed, but the World Tree still did not launch an attack. Just as the three universal civilizations were wondering if this was a diversion, the detection device finally sent a report. It discovered that a large-scale World Tree fleet had entered the over-the-horizon observation area and was slowly advancing toward the interception circle. There were more than 200 billion battleships, and it was clearly the new wave of invading army according to the intelligence. Because of the special observation device provided by Han Shao, the current over-the-horizon detection range of the three universal civilizations far exceeded the range of their control. This meant that they could launch over-the-horizon attacks on this World Tree fleet from a further distance, indirectly increasing the strategic distance for the enemy to reach the interception circle. After locking onto the target, the three universal civilizations immediately launched over-the-horizon firepower coverage. At the same time, they used the multidimensional sky-opening transportation device to release the spacetime splicing self-destructing troops in an attempt to consume more enemy troops. The World Tree Army endured a period of bombardment before they passed through a large portion of the strategic area and arrived at the edge of the area controlled by the three universal civilizations. Further ahead was the spacetime-anchored orbit network that sealed the jump point. However, the World Tree Army did not attack quickly like the previous 3 times in order to avoid wasting too many troops on the way. Instead, they stopped at the edge of the area controlled by the 3 universal civilizations and spread out the Lerbo space protection belt to isolate the Endless Fleet from long-range attack. At the same time, they split up their troops and supported each other while sweeping through the spacetime-anchored orbit. This time, the World Tree did not seem to want to launch a surprise attack. Instead, it planned to use the large army as the foundation to launch a large-scale battle. The fleet that swept through the orbit this time was not the small fleet from before. It was even larger. The 3 universal civilizations were in a dilemma. They knew that the World Tree was clearly forcing them to leave the interception circle and fight in the wild, which would consume their forces more efficiently. In the previous few times when they resisted the World Tree's attacks, the interception circle had played a huge role. Most importantly, the wormhole support network hidden in the strategic depths of the layers of defense could quickly gather troops and descend on the World Tree's main attack area. If it was a field battle, this advantage would be greatly reduced. Although the multidimensional sky-opening transportation device could also provide support, it was a universal treasure with a high production cost. The limited number of universal treasures resulted in the efficiency of sending large batches of troops being inferior to the regular wormhole support channel. However, if they did not care about the sweeping operation of the World Tree Fleet, the space stabilization orbit that had been laid out over the past few days would not be fixed. After some consideration, the three universal civilizations still sent out some troops to try and stop them. They also continuously attacked the large troops that the World Tree had stationed at the edge of the controlled area. This caused high-intensity field battles to break out in the controlled area. In order to reduce the casualties of the local battles, the Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations were sent out one after another to help their own troops fight against the enemy's fleet. They were also equipped with the King mechanical suit and could retreat to the interception circle base at any time. However, the World Tree experts did not appear, as if they did not intend to restrain the high-level combatants of the three universal civilizations. Although the three universal civilizations had obtained most of the victories in the local battlefield with relatively low losses, under the pressure of the enemy army, they were unable to repair or maintain the space stabilization orbit. They also had to endure constant attacks. Temporarily repelling the sweeping troops was just like drinking poison to quench their thirst. After more than a month of confrontation, both sides had lost tens of billions of troops. The three universal civilizations finally decided that they could not stop the enemy from destroying all the space stabilization orbits, so they had no choice but to throw away this burden and shrink their troops to preserve their strength. They no longer invested troops in a battle of attrition. Instead, they exchanged for strategic depth and long-range attacks to wipe out the World Tree's troop. The two sides fought for another period of time. After about 3 months, the World Tree Army finally swept through all the space anchoring orbits set up by the three universal civilizations, freeing up the jump points of all the vanguard armies for more than half a year. For this, they paid the price of nearly 100 billion troops. On April 6, 784 of the Galaxy calendar, the World Tree Army that had been stationed at the edge of the controlled area for several months finally moved out again and attacked the interception circle. After a period of travel, the World Tree Army, which only had about half of its troops left, finally crossed the strategic depth and arrived at the interception circle. They tried to break through the blockade and immediately engaged in an intense battle with the three universal civilizations' troops. The three universal civilizations were waiting for the enemy to tire out, and they had the advantage in numbers. As soon as the battle started, they quickly gained the upper hand. According to this trend, it would not be a problem for them to withstand this wave of attacks and destroy the World Tree's fleet of hundreds of billions. However, on the third day of the battle between the two sides, 3 World Tree reinforcements landed from the nearby jump points that had been unsealed. A total of 150 billion fresh troops entered the battle and attacked different areas. The pressure on the three universal civilizations immediately increased. They mobilized their existing troops to resist while summoning reinforcements from the rear. After another 5 days of fighting, 2 more World Tree reinforcements landed, totaling more than 100 billion. On the 9th day, the 80 billion World Tree fleet arrived. On the 14th day, 140 billion enemy reinforcements arrived. On the 20th day, 206 billion enemy reinforcements arrived. The World Tree's reinforcements were endless. No matter how many soldiers died at the front lines, the reinforcements would be sent from the rear. They wanted to completely exert their advantage in a war of attrition and wear through the entire interception circle. Warzone C-1008A is in an emergency. Warzone L-0213B is in an emergency. The scene in the command room was very busy. The emotionless synthesized voice of the spaceship artificial intelligence kept broadcasting the emergency alarms of the war zones. Simon and the other upper echelons stared at the real-time monitoring of the battle, their eyes bloodshot with fatigue. The intense battle lasted for nearly a month, and it did not stop for a second. Currently, none of the surviving generals were not exhausted, and the losses of the fleets on both sides had long risen to hundreds of billions. On the side, most of the beyond grade as were injured. These injuries were all caused by the World Tree Fleet, and no high-level combatants were involved. The endless reinforcements of the World Tree made the battle situation precarious. Even the beyond grade as had no choice but to fight against the fleet. In this month, they were like firefighters, stabilizing the various battlefields that were in danger time and time again. They did not have much time to rest and recover. Even so, the contributions of the many beyond grade as were just a drop in the bucket in a large-scale galactic battle with more than 1 trillion battleship. They could not play a decisive role. Many beyond grade as were worried. Although the high-level combatants of the World Tree did not participate in the battle, causing there to be no new victims among the beyond grade as on their side, seeing the 3 universal civilizations' troops getting more and more disadvantaged, everyone broke out in cold sweat. Kasuyi looked at the battle monitor and moved closer to Han Xiao. He said in a low voice, "The World Tree has launched an all-out attack. They are fighting head-on without caring about casualties. The first and second layers of defense have been penetrated, and the enemy's reinforcements are still coming. From the looks of it, the interception circle should not be able to hold on." "I think so." Han Xiao exhaled. He was also exhausted. The intense war that had lasted for a month had completely turned this place into a meat grinder. Even most of the players had used up their daily resurrection quota many times. In such a place, what he could do was very limited. The World Tree did not use any special plan this time. They purely relied on their advantage in numbers to fight head-on. As long as they did not break through the interception circle, they would not stop sending reinforcements. If a month was not enough, then 2 months, 3 months. There was only one word to describe it: reckless. The interception circle could not stop the World Tree's advance once and for all, and it would be broken through sooner or later. However, this day seemed to have come earlier than expected. From the moment it was established, it had only bought about a year for the 3 universal civilizations. "Black Star, we have to consider retreating too," Kasuyi whispered. Han Xiao ignored him and looked at the battlefield outside. At this moment, countless battleships were fighting and exchanging fire. The dazzling lights were like the stars in the sky. The silent resplendence carried with it a destructive aura. Every second, countless creatures would fall into the embrace of death. Even if the 3 universal civilizations' interception circle troops were defeated, they would have enough time to retreat to their territory. Even if the World Tree passed through the interception circle, it would still take a long time to reach the edge of the flickering world. However, there was a high chance that the 3 universal civilizations would not be able to replicate a defensive line similar to the interception circle. This meant that as long as the World Tree broke through, it would mean that the other party's invasion of the territory had officially entered the countdown. At this moment, another World Tree fleet entered the battlefield. The familiar Tree King Halo followed, immediately increasing the combat strength of the World Tree members, attracting everyone's attention. This is the ability of the Tree King. They've finally sent out their high-level combatants. The 3 universal civilizations are already having a hard time holding on. If the Tree King uses the Halo at this time, it will probably be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. I wonder which Tree King came this time. Han Zhao's eyes flashed with seriousness. Not only him, all the other beyond grade as locked their gazes on the source of the halo and tensed up. Chapter 1377. In the real-time surveillance footage, the battle line between the 3 universal civilizations' intercepting circle and the World Tree invasion fleet was extremely long, divided into many different war zones. Among them, the 3 main war zones were the most important. They were all intercepting lines that the World Tree had invested heavily in, and their troops were all in the hundreds of billions. Under everyone's gazes, a new fleet sailed into the main battlefield. There were not many of them, only a few 100 million, but they emitted extremely condensed energy fluctuations. On the radar, one beyond grade A energy source after another was displayed. As soon as this small fleet entered, it brought about a significant change to the main war zone. A green light spread out, and every World Tree battleship that was swept by it was activated. It lit up with a faint green light and obtained the buff of the Tree King's halo. The stalemate was instantly broken, and the speed at which they pushed the line increased significantly. If this line of defense is breached, they will soon be able to touch the wormhole support network behind this war zone. At that time, the situation will become even worse. This place will become a breakthrough point, and a chain reaction will occur, causing the entire line to collapse. Simon took a look, and his judgment was the same as the artificial intelligence's analysis. Secret Master crossed his arms and said with a deep voice, "You want us to carry out a decapitation operation and kill this Tree King? The difficulty is too high. Unless he leaves the protection of the fleet, we will be sending ourselves to our deaths." Another commander turned to look at Han Shao. "Black Star, what do you think? Let's wait and see. There's no chance now." It was rare for Han Shao to have the same thought. Although he really wanted to kill this unknown Tree King who had suddenly appeared, the other party was under the heavy protection of hundreds of billions of fleets. The feasibility of taking off his clothes was too low. Furthermore, the previous experience of the subduing Tree King being killed had been sent back to the World Tree. This time, the Tree King would probably stay in the fleet obediently and not give them a chance. He had already provided a lot of information and technology, making the three universal civilizations' current situation many times better than in his previous life. However, military strength had always been the World Tree's strength. Once they launched a large-scale attack, as long as the three universal civilizations did not want to lose their territory, they would have to fight head-on. There were not many shortcuts. Although the technology trees of both sides were different, they both had the standard destructive strategic technology of higher civilizations. For example, there were many space-type and dimension-type weapons. They both knew how to crack and counter each other. Most of the fancy technologies were useless against each other and could only be used to oppress the weak. Only a small number of unique technologies could not be cracked. The advantage of a beyond grade A was that their mobility and strength were concentrated in their individual bodies. Their strength was guerrilla warfare and breaking through the surface with a single point. However, in such a huge galactic battlefield, guerrilla warfare was not suitable, and sudden attacks were very dangerous. The effect of a single body was limited. Generally speaking, the number of enemies did not mean much to the beyond grade as. Regardless of whether it was tens of millions or hundreds of billions of fleets, as long as they did not complete the encirclement, it would be very easy for the beyond grade as to escape. However, due to strategic reasons, many beyond grade as had no choice but to hold the line here. This was not the strength of individual strength. The time it took to exhaust and destroy tens of thousands of battleships was enough for the tens of billions of fleets to launch many rounds of attack. However, this was something that universal civilizations would only use when facing external enemies. If it was used during a civil war, there would be a new desolate universe belt. Send more reinforcements. Simon also knew that the risk was too high, so he did not ask a group of beyond grade as to carry out this mission. He only sent more troops to fill this war zone. The World Tree civilization kept sending reinforcements, and the three universal civilizations did the same. This was also the reason why the interception circle could last for a month. Otherwise, it would have been broken by the second reinforcements of the World Tree. As the space anchor orbit had been cleared, the World Tree's jump point was close to the periphery of the interception circle, and the support distance was shortened. Therefore, the reinforcements could be quickly sent into the battlefield. However, just as Simon gave the order, an unforeseen event happened. The reinforcements did not stay in the main formation but advanced to the crossfire area. One after another, the World Tree experts flew out and surrounded a tall and thin figure. The Tree King halo on his body revealed his identity. This group of beyond grade as cruised back and forth on the front line, retreating from time to time. In terms of team battles, they were extremely close to the front. In the interception circle, everyone's eyes changed slightly. Han Xiao narrowed his eyes. This guy wants to lure our high-level combatants out. Old Yang is scheming. Everyone nodded. They naturally understood that the Tree King and a group of high-level combatants had appeared not because they wanted to be reckless, but because they were not satisfied with exhausting the three universal civilizations' forces. If the three universal civilizations tried to use their troops to surround and kill them, the Tree King and the others would definitely retreat to the main formation. Only by sending out high-level combatants would the Tree King and the others stay to fight and carry out the tried and tested exchange tactic. Their goal was to exhaust the experts of the three universal civilizations. If they did not care about him, he would continue to provide the halo, increasing the pressure on this war zone and opening a breakthrough in the battle. There was no loss. It was like exposing ones but to lure others, taking the initiative to give them a chance. If they did not go up and attack, they would be useless. Humph, looks like they're very confident. Reeve clenched his fists, eager to give it a try. She had never fought a World Tree expert before. Manison said calmly, "Be careful. They know that we have recovery-type espers who can greatly reduce the battle losses, but they still use the Tree King as a bait to try to exchange. Maybe they have already thought of a way to deal with our recovery-type espers. We can't rule out the possibility that they feel that exchanging hundreds of people for a few of us is a profit," Sun Hunter said. "How about it? Are we going up?" Kasuyi turned to look at Han Xiao, and everyone else also looked over. Han Xiao did not answer immediately. He stared at the Tree King on the screen, who was surrounded by many experts. After experiencing the war in his previous life, he naturally recognized the appearance of every Tree King, and the information of this person flashed through his mind. Heart Tree King Minokor, a psychic among the 5 Tree Kings. He has many methods. Although his strength is not much different from the subduing Tree King, he is twice as difficult to deal with as the subduing Tree King. In my previous life, he heavily injured Kasuyi and Oathkeeper respectively and controlled no less than 4 beyond grade as. Other than being killed in the final battle, there are no other records of him dying. The most common methods he uses are psychic teleportation, mind tampering, spirit tide. The mental methods of psychics were strange, and Han Xiao felt that it was troublesome. The greatest threat was the ability to instigate defection. Altering the thoughts of a beyond grade A was extremely difficult, and it was not something that could be done in a short period of time. There was a high chance that the other party would not have the time to complete it in the fierce battle, but the slightest risk could not be ignored. Han Xiao turned around and took in the expressions of the commanders. He slowly exhaled and said with a deep voice, "If there's a chance, there's a chance. Since there's a chance, let's give it a try. If we can kill this Tree King, the situation in this war zone will improve a lot. This is one of the few things we can do now." Han Xiao had another thought. The threat of the Heart Tree King was especially great. If he could stay here, the subsequent battles would be much easier. Hearing this, the group nodded and had no objections. The beyond grade, as who chose to participate in the battle, walked out one after another. On the way to the multidimensional sky opening transportation device, Han Xiao was a few steps behind. He came to Aurora's side and opened the private communication. "Be careful later. I suspect that Tree King will use his mental ability to attack you through space. Even if some of your life energy leaks out this time, You'd rather watch some of your companions die than approach the battlefield. Remember to keep Sorokin by your side at all times. Although he's a stinky little brother, he can at least block a few mental attacks for you. Got it. Aurora nodded obediently. On the other side, in the main war zone enveloped by the Tree King's halo, Heart Tree King calmly led a group of revived World Tree experts around the battlefield. With so many beyond grade as gathered together, it was naturally very eye-catching. Wherever they passed, batches of the three universal civilizations' fleets would focus fire on them. However, the nearby World Tree Fleet kept using their shields to block rounds of attacks for Heart Tree King. Therefore, Heart Tree King and the others looked like they were taking a stroll on an intense battlefield. Is the enemy still not sending their high-level combatants? Heart Tree King looked at the three universal civilizations' defense line frequently. He was not in a hurry at all. Anyway, he had the initiative and was very patient. As soon as he said that, Fortitude Tree King's voice sounded in the mental network. Humph, I think you should come back. They probably won't dare to make a move. Don't waste my time there. I want to return to the Mother Tree. Bear with it. Heart Tree King was helpless. In order to descend, Fortitude Tree King had no choice but to appear in his hometown. It did not take long for him to become extremely lazy. At this moment, Fortitude Tree King was still on standby and did not activate his ability. They only had the body of the Lord's avatar in their hands. This was Heart Tree King's request. He had hidden his trump card and was prepared to summon Fortitude Tree King at the right time. He wanted to say something, but the next moment, beyond grade A energy suddenly appeared in his senses. Heart Tree King and the many World Tree experts looked in the direction of the energy source. They saw a group of beyond grade as flying out from the three universal civilizations' fleet and crossing the battlefield to attack them. The leader was the outsider who had left a deep impression on them. They really came. There seemed to be more people than last time. It seems like they are the same as us. Their high-level combatants are still holding back. Heart Tree King's eyes flickered. When he saw the revivers participating in this battle, he immediately thought that they were the experts hidden by the three universal civilizations. As for Garros and the others who had died in the previous battle, they did not join the battle because they were worried about their lives. They did not appear, so he naturally could not see them. Go. Try to cause as much damage as possible and force their recovery-type Esper out. As this thought flashed through his mind, Heart Tree King did not show any weakness. He took the lead and charged forward, followed by the World Tree experts like meteors. The beyond grade A troops of both sides passed through the battlefield and collided without any communication. They instantly charged into the other party's formation and threw each other off their feet. A chaotic battle broke out in an instant. Last time, the three universal civilizations had no choice but to surround and attack a portion of the peak beyond grade as. This time, this portion of the World Tree experts was stopped by the revivers who were also at the peak beyond grade A level. Reeve, Hilbert, and the others found the executive officers, the high-level Holy Tree emissaries, and the members of the 13 ancestral spirits to fight against the strong enemies. The number of experts sent out by the World Tree this time was about the same as the last time. They were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, and as soon as they started fighting, they were suppressed by the beyond grade as of the three universal civilizations. Han Xiao turned into a mechanical deity and found Heart Tree King. Energy shockwaves and psychic shockwaves kept exploding between the two of them, and the energy reaction was like blue and white soap bubbles that kept forming and popping. Heart Tree King's combat style was completely different from subduing Tree Kings. As a psychic, he did not like to fight head-on. He relied on his strange methods to move around nimbly, releasing large Yoi attacks from time to time. He also converted his psychic energy into physical psychic energy, forming layers of shields to block the torrential attacks of the mechanical deity. Swoosh! Psionic energy vibrated, and a huge mechanical blade slashed across. Heart Tree King seemed to have seen through it. He nimbly dodged and used psychic energy to pull his body away, dodging the slash that contained Getta's Hadakin. The blade light that shot out was like a dark blue waterfall that swept across the battlefield. From near to far, hundreds of battleships exploded into fireworks one after another. Outsider, this is the first time we've met, right? The last time you came to our territory and caused a ruckus. I haven't fought you yet. Heart Tree King dodged the close-range attacks of the mechanical deity and the mechanical army while sending a mental message to Han Shao. Han Shao did not answer. He raised his hand and shot out a few dark red splitting rays. Heart Tree King's figure flashed, and he dodged a distance away as if he had teleported. The splitting rays only shattered the afterimage he left behind. This guy is so slippery, Han Shao clicked his tongue in his mind. Heart Tree King's psychic techniques were very exquisite. He used psychic energy to pull and control his body, and he was very agile. At the same time, he kept releasing mental interference to mislead the direction of his attacks and reduce his hit rate. Even when facing the rain of light shot by the mechanical army, Heart Tree King could still dodge with ease, as if he had seen through all the attack trajectories in advance. Compared to Kasui's wide attack style that ignored mana, Heart Tree King's combat style was the exact opposite. It was very delicate, and it always focused on harassment and nibbling away at the enemy. He flew around the enemy like a mosquito, occasionally using mental attacks to stab the enemy before immediately retreating. It was very difficult for the enemy to hit him. His fighting style was very dirty and annoying. Pugilists are still the best. They like to fight head-on. It's so easy, Han Shao could not help but miss the subduing Tree King. However, although Heart Tree King was very agile, he had no choice but to focus on dealing with Han Zhao's attack. Both of them restrained each other. While the two of them were entangled, in the battlefield not far away, a direct beyond grade A fought very fiercely. He exchanged injuries with the Holy Tree Emissary and was severely injured. The next moment, a few dazzling life energy beams suddenly shot out from the three Universal Civilizations fleet. They were very far away and headed straight for their teammate. The Holy Tree Emissary, who was already prepared, endured the pain and shot out spells to intercept the life energy. Half of it was scattered by his spells, but the remaining life energy suddenly changed its route, drawing a strange distorted trajectory and hitting the target that was about to heal. The life force of this direct beyond grade quickly recovered. It hit. Aurora, who was waiting in the protective circle of the fleet, was overjoyed. She had not stayed for nothing for the past half a year. She had been training her control over the life energy that had left her body every day in order to avoid the enemy's interception and heal the target. On the other side, Heart Tree King could not help but divert some of his attention and look in Aurora's direction. Found her. Before he could finish his thought, a few splitting rays arrived in front of him. He was slightly distracted and was a step slower in dodging, leaving several scorching marks on his body. Heart Tree King hurriedly retracted his attention and covered his wounds to avoid the continuous pursuit of the mechanical army. He narrowed his eyes. I really can't be distracted when dealing with this guy. Fortunately, someone can stop him for a while and free me up. The next second, Heart Tree King suddenly retreated. Seeing this, Han Shao immediately chased after him. The two of them chased after each other, and the battlefield shifted a large distance away. At this moment, a powerful beyond grade A energy suddenly rose from a World Tree battleship. The spaceship suddenly exploded, and a new dark green mechanical deity seemed to have broken out of its shell. Its body rapidly expanded, and it held a two-headed, wide-faced mechanical blade that was covered in energy circuits. It slashed over with astonishing psionic energy, and at the same time, green armored mechanical soldiers swarmed out and bit Han Zhao's mechanical army. This energy! It's another Tree King! Han Shao raised his brows and immediately raised his blade to meet the attack. Two huge mechanical deity weapons, one black and one green, clashed. Clang! The heavy sound of metal colliding sounded in everyone's hearts, and a dazzling electric arc wheel burst out in an instant. A huge energy shockwave swept away everything around it. "Humph, outsider, I'll be your opponent." Fortitude Tree King's voice sounded in the public channel. "Which one are you?" Han Shao looked at the combat information and raised his brows in surprise. This Tree King was not one of the 5 Tree Kings he knew in his previous life. Shouldn't the Tree King of the mechanic class be the Emperor Tree King? Where did this Fortitude Tree King come from? Just as he was shocked, Heart Tree King took advantage of the fact that Fortitude Tree King was blocking his opponent and suddenly left the battlefield. He used his mind to lock onto Aurora's life aura from afar. Then, he opened his arms, and a diamond-like purple leaf appeared from his chest. It spun and emitted a strange fluctuation. The next moment, Heart Tree King's mental energy burst out. Illusion, Heart Lock. End of chapter. Chapter 1378. Surging mental energy surged into the floating purple crystal leaf, and it instantly shone brightly. A beam of purple light suddenly shot out toward Aurora, who was within the protective circle of the 3 Universal Civilizations fleet. Seeing this, the closest mechanical army shook off Fortitude Tree King's entanglement and jointly raised a psionic shield to block the light purple beam. However, the moment they came into contact, the light purple beam did not show any signs of being obstructed. Its speed did not change at all, and it easily pierced through the psionic shield, as if the shield did not exist. The mechanical soldiers that used their bodies to block it were also pierced through, but their bodies were not damaged at all. It was as if this beam of light did not exist in the material world and could ignore all kinds of defenses. Stop this attack. Han Shao had been paying attention to Heart Tree King's actions. Although he did not know what method Heart Tree King had used, it was best to stop it. He pushed aside Fortitude Tree King's mechanical body and immediately called his teammates who were fighting all over the battlefield. Hearing Han Zhao's order, the Beyond Grade as who were closer barely managed to divert their attention from the battle and used all sorts of methods. They threw out magic, esper abilities, and psychic energy in an attempt to disperse the light purple beam, but they were all penetrated. Seeing this, everyone was shocked. What ability is this? It can't be blocked. Why does it look like the characteristics of the 10,000 deity scepter? Under everyone's gazes, this beam of light passed through the Beyond Grade A battle area and shot into the protective circle of the 3 Universal Civilizations fleet. It passed through one battleship after another that came to stop it. No matter how Aurora's battleship changed its position, the beam of light continued to track it and soon penetrated the spaceship that Aurora was in. The light purple beam passed through the shield and outer armor, shot into the command room, and headed straight for Aurora. Sorokin, the substitute emissary, appeared with a whoosh. His condensed psychic energy rushed forward, but it could not affect it. Even his body was pierced through, but he was not injured at all. Just as it was about to hit Aurora, when it was only a few meters away, the light purple beam seemed to have hit an invisible barrier and suddenly slid away, drawing an arc and flying out of the battleship in a flash. Seeing this, the tensed-up Aurora heaved a sigh of relief. Looks like the space-time amber is still useful. In front of her was a space-time amber ball. Han Shao had given her a batch of them for self-defense. Currently, there was nothing known that could pass through the space-time amber ball. However, the light purple beam did not dissipate. After flying out of the battleship, it made a big circle, readjusted its position, and shot towards Aurora, locking onto its target. Seeing this scene from afar, Heart Tree King's expression changed slightly as though he was rather surprised. There's actually a way to block it? Could it be the special substance that separates the mother tree from the individual? Heart Tree King did not hesitate and immediately reached out to grab the purple crystal leaf. The green power of the World Tree circulated and activated a new power in an instant. Gotcha! Cracks appeared on the surface of the purple crystal leaf. While it was damaged, it released even more power and released a halo of light. The light purple beam that was chasing after Aurora seemed to be affected. It suddenly exploded and disappeared. At first glance, Sorokin thought that this guy had given up on attacking. However, he suddenly heard a plop beside him. He turned around and saw Aurora suddenly falling to the ground. "What happened to you?" Sorokin was shocked and hurriedly went to Aurora. He saw that Aurora's eyes were lifeless as she stared straight ahead. Her eyes did not move at all, as though she had lost her perception of the outside world. He quickly used his telekinesis to probe into Aurora's brain and found that Aurora's consciousness had already been sealed up. It was wrapped in a thick layer of purple crystal. There were also streams of green energy flowing within the crystal. His telekinesis couldn't penetrate it. "What happened? My soul connection with Aurora has been severed." Hela's voice sounded in the channel. She was the first to notice the abnormality, and her tone was urgent. "Aurora has lost consciousness. Some kind of energy has sealed her thoughts. I don't know what kind of mental ability it is. Not good, I can't undo it for the time being." Sorokin told the truth and used his psychic power to attack the purple crystal. However, the purple crystal in Aurora's brain was extremely tough. His psychic power could only leave shallow marks on it, and the purple crystal quickly repaired them. Swoosh! Just as he finished speaking, Han Shao used the king to leave the battlefield and instantly appeared beside Aurora. Without a word, he poked Aurora and immediately checked on Aurora's situation. All of Aurora's abilities had turned into a frozen gray color, and a special status appeared on her stats window. Illusion, Heart Lock. Seals the thoughts and consciousness of an individual and enters a vegetative state. The recipient will fall into an endless virtual illusion formed by their own desires, ambitions, longing, imagination, fear, dreams, pursuits, and other factors. If the recipient treats the illusion as reality, it will continuously provide energy to the seal, causing the strength of the seal to not weaken with time. Instead, it will gradually increase. At the same time, the weaker the recipient is, the more difficult it will be for them to see through the illusion. Duration, unknown. A thought seal that even Sorokin found difficult to break. It must be the characteristics of a universal treasure. Han Zhao's mind flashed with the purple crystal leaf that the Heart Tree King had taken out, and his face tightened. There was no information about this item in his previous life. The explosion just now ignored the distance and attack path, turning into a direct attack within an area. It was like a spiritual blast that directly affected an individual. As long as Aurora wasn't tightly wrapped in the spacetime amber, there would always be a hole to enter and be attacked. If this move was used on others, it would also be a huge threat, but the Heart Tree King only used it on one person. Furthermore, the purple crystal leaf was damaged after using it, so there were probably some restrictions. This is not good. Aurora's current energy level is still too low. Han Zhao's eyes narrowed. Aurora's Esper ability was special, but her level was limited. The effect of the seal cast by the Heart Tree King was naturally obvious, and the chances of her seeing through the illusion were too low. If her strength could reach the peak of the beyond Grade A realm, the seal would definitely not be as strong as it was now. "Those with psychic abilities, come over and try to unseal it." Han Shao immediately gave the order. He did not have time to stay here any longer. He quickly activated the king's repeated horizontal jump function and returned to his original position. In just a short while, the mechanical deity, which had lost its core, was cut into pieces by the Fortitude Tree King. He had no choice but to use mechanical force to connect the pieces of the body and recombine them. He continued to fight with the Fortitude Tree King. Knowing that the healer had fallen, the beyond grade as were anxious. They wanted to shake off their opponents and return to check on Aurora's situation, but the World Tree experts had also received the order from the Heart Tree King. They were very excited and pestered them with all their might, not letting the beyond grades leave. "Ha, your recovery type Esper has been knocked down by His Excellency Tree King. Let's see how you guys recover. Aren't you not afraid of death? Come on, continue to fight. Without confidence, do you still dare to exchange injuries?" In the mental network, many World Tree experts were excited and sneered. The scene of the previous battle was still vivid in their minds. This group of enemies relied on the healer behind them and kept exchanging injuries with them. Even if they were heavily injured time and time again, as long as they were healed, they would be able to recover and fight until they were very uncomfortable. In the end, they had no choice but to use self-destruction tactics, but they only dragged a few people down with them. At the thought of the embarrassing battle last time, many World Tree experts were furious. At this moment, Heart Tree King had used his methods to sweep away the confidence of these enemies. The beyond grade as of the World Tree all became spirited. They felt that they had finally been able to display their usual strength in terms of exchanging lives. They had never been afraid of anyone. The Fortitude Tree King turned around and deflected Han Zhao's attack. Hearing the commotion in the mental network, he could not help but send a mental message to the Heart Tree King. "Are you sure this can seal the enemy's recovery type Esper forever?" "I didn't say forever. As long as there are enough Espers who spend a lot of time wearing down the seal, it will be unlocked sooner or later. However, as long as the recovery type Esper is unable to play a role in this battle, my goal will be achieved." The Heart Tree King kept the cracked purple crystal leaf into his body and heaved a sigh of relief. Without the recovery type ability user, the battle losses will return to normal. As long as we kill enough of the enemy's high-level combat power in this battle and cause substantial losses, even if the ability user wakes up later, it will be useless. In his opinion, even if he only sealed the recovery type Esper in one battle, he could still succeed in the exchange. As long as he killed enough high-level enemy combatants in one go, he would be able to use the snowball advantage of the World Tree. At this moment, the plan was already more than half successful. The Heart Tree King was relieved and returned to the battle. He cooperated with the Fortitude Tree King and attacked Han Zhao. For a moment, the three of them were locked in a fierce battle. Not long after, some beyond grade as finally shook off their opponents with the help of their teammates and returned to the fleet. They came to Aurora's side, but after checking, their hearts sank. The situation is not good. This thought seal is too strong, and it's also protected by a special force. Even if we work together, we won't be able to undo it in a short period of time. Kasui's voice sounded in the channel. "Not even you?" Sun Hunter was surprised. Kasui shook his head. "Although I have unlimited energy, there is a limit to the strength of my psychic energy. It's like water constantly washing away the reef. It takes time." Hearing Kasui's words, the hearts of the association members skipped a beat. The next moment, an association member immediately suggested in the channel, "Black Star, why don't we retreat first and fight them after Aurora's seal is unlocked? Do you think the World Tree will watch us retreat? Furthermore, even if we retreat, the Tree King Halo will continue to take effect. There's a high chance that the front line won't be able to hold on. When Aurora unlocks the seal and wants to fight the other party, it's hard to say if they'll give us a chance. By then, it'll be too late." Before Han Zhao could say anything, Olu spoke first. A large number of direct members ignored life and death and continued to fight with their opponent. Seeing this, many of the association members who wanted to retreat could not escape and could only continue fighting. However, without the protection of the healer, a large number of association members considered their own safety and did not dare to risk their lives like last time. The combat strength they unleashed was far inferior to the first time they fought. Instead, they were faintly suppressed by the fearless world tree expert. Fortunately, they had the advantage in numbers this time, and there was a group of revivers to support the situation. Otherwise, their losses might have surpassed the other party. Many beyond grade as had their own thoughts as they fought fiercely. This time, the battle was much more bloody. Beyond grade as on both sides were frequently sacrificed, and the losses continued to increase. Without that recovery-type Esper, your true colors will be revealed. The casualties will increase. How long can you last? As Han Shao dealt with the attacks of Fortitude Tree King and Heart Tree King, the other party's mocking mental message sounded in his mind. Boom! Energy exploded, and a dark blue compressed energy cannon blasted Fortitude Tree King away. Han Shao took the opportunity to glance at the losses of the Beyond Grade as. His mood was calm, and he did not care at all. He did not respond to the other party's mockery at all. Turning around, Han Shao started fighting with Fortitude Tree King again. Suddenly, he felt a sharp pain in his brain, and Heart Tree King threw a few more mental blasts at him. Han Shao shook his head, and felt that it was a little troublesome. Just one Tree King is already difficult enough to deal with. With two of them attacking together, it's even harder to deal with them. Being surrounded by these two fellows, although I can withstand their attacks, it's very difficult for me to deal with them effectively. I need someone to share the pressure with me and let me deal with one of them. As this thought flashed through his mind, Han Shao gritted his teeth and kept glancing at Heart Tree King. His goal was not to be in a stalemate with the two of them. If he could catch a Tree King here, that would be the best. At the very least, he had to kill one of them and make the other party enter the dormant period. If he let the other party escape unscathed, it would be too much of a loss. He was being held back like this, and the two Tree Kings were taking care of each other. If they wanted to leave, he would most likely not be able to stop them. Han Zhao's target was Heart Tree King. After all, Fortitude Tree King was only a lord's avatar, so there was no need to deal with him. However, someone had to restrain him. Although Fortitude Tree King was an unfamiliar guy, his strength was worthy of his identity as a Tree King. He was also one of the top peak beyond grade as. In his previous life, the World Tree War was a very late version. Now that the war had been brought forward by many years, Han Shao could only think that Fortitude Tree King was the Mechanic Tree King of this era. He had lost his position in the future and was replaced by Emperor Tree King. As for the reason, he did not know. Suppressing the distracting thoughts in his heart, Han Shao looked at the battle situation. Seeing that most of his teammates were fighting a bloody battle and could not split themselves, his eyes flashed. He switched the communication channel and sent an order to one of the external reinforcements. At this moment, he felt a sense of danger. Han Shao hurriedly opened the Emperor's robe and saw that Fortitude Tree King had used some kind of skill. The two-headed blade created a whirlpool of green energy and smashed into his body. Green flames exploded, and his huge body was sent flying. "Humph, you still dare to be distracted in front of me. I think you don't take me seriously at all." Fortitude Tree King waved his blade and said coldly, "What, you want the great mighty heavenly dragon?" Han Shao clicked his tongue and casually replied with a joke that the other party did not understand. "Humph, I don't know what you're talking about. Anyway, with me holding you back, don't even think about helping your other companions." Fortitude Tree King raised his blade and pointed at Han Shao. "Are you a pig? Snort again?" Han Shao was not to be outdone. He realized that the World Tree experts liked to chat when they were fighting. "Outsider, they think that you have an almost indestructible body. I'll see if I can kill you today." Fortitude Tree King activated the fully armored cannons and shot out dense beams of light. He then swung his blade and was about to charge forward. However, at this moment, the light of the multi-dimensional sky-opening transportation device flashed behind Han Shao, and a huge mechanical deity suddenly descended. It was a mixture of flesh and machinery. It was Herberlin. The war in the interception circle had been going on for a month, and Herberlin had been on standby for a long time. The moment he received Han Zhao's message, he took the teleportation device and descended from the flickering world. During the stalemate before the war broke out, he had already completed his weapon installation. He was now fully armed and in peak condition. World Tree. Our war is not over yet. Herberlin's angry roar sounded in the public channel. Countless thrusters were activated at the same time, and a huge pressure pushed Herberlin to accelerate. The giant blade in his hand swept up psionic energy and slashed at Fortitude Tree King. Clang! Herberlin's attack landed on Fortitude Tree King's blocking posture, and a shockwave swept out. Another new force entered the arena. Many World Tree experts looked over and were stunned. You, Herberlin? You're still alive. Fortitude Tree King was shocked. Every World Tree expert present knew Herberlin. They had fought him when they destroyed the Karma Republic, so they had a deep impression of this enemy. Heart Tree King was stunned for a moment before coming to a realization. He felt that he had understood the truth. I see. This civilization's initial information about our World Tree came from you. Chapter 1379. The World Tree experts were suddenly enlightened. No wonder this civilization showed a certain level of understanding of the World Tree when they first came into contact. Herberlin, the person who knew that his hometown had been invaded, was the best source of information. This made sense. The members of the World Tree still remembered every battle. Although the Karma Republic was not a powerful opponent, Herberlin had left a deep impression on many World Tree experts. Some of them had even participated in the siege. This was a rare prey that had slipped away from their hands and disappeared into the vast universe after the fall of the Karma Republic. After the initial shock, Fortitude Tree King quickly recovered from the shock of seeing an acquaintance. He activated the protective equipment of his body and blocked Herberlin's angry attack. He coldly said, "A loser whose civilization has been destroyed. Instead of hiding and struggling at death's door, you still dare to continue going against us. You saved your life last time, but you won't be so lucky this time. The Mother Tree has always wanted to devour you. Why don't you take the initiative to merge with us and reunite with your compatriots? As long as I'm still alive, the radiance of the Karma Republic will never disappear." Herberlin stabbed his blade into Fortitude Tree King's thick shield and embedded it inside. Two new mechanical arms suddenly grew out of his shoulders and grabbed onto Fortitude Tree King's body, fixing it in front of him. Then, the flesh and machinery on his chest slid open, revealing a large energy radiation port that instantly lit up. Boom! A dark red beam of light with an extremely thick diameter shot out and disappeared in a flash. The chest of Fortitude Tree King's body was penetrated, leaving behind a huge hole with torn edges. Broken mechanical parts flew all over the sky. This injury was not light. Fortitude Tree King hurriedly operated the flow force field and force output structure of his body at high load. A huge force surged out, and he immediately slashed off the mechanical arm that was holding onto him. He raised his leg and kicked Herberlin away, leaving a deep footprint on the other party's abdomen armor and pulling some distance away. Some of the surrounding mechanical soldiers turned around and surged into Fortitude Tree King's body like tired birds returning to their nest. A large number of mechanical structures flowed in his body and quickly filled the wound on his chest. Herberlin's huge mechanical body stopped retreating and raised its hand to release an invisible force field that covered Fortitude Tree King. Fortitude Tree King's mechanical body froze, as if it had been hit by a body immobilization spell. Just as the cracking device on the Fortitude Tree King's body was analyzing the operating principles of the force field at high speed, Herberlin held his weapon with both hands. His muscles and machinery twisted, accumulating an endless amount of energy. Dark red streams of light appeared on the surface of his body, and his energy reactions soared. The next moment, Herberlin's enormous body suddenly turned into a red bolt of lightning and charged forward. It instantly passed by Fortitude Tree King, as if it had teleported behind him. Deity maneuver. Swoosh. With a flash of lightning, a huge hole was cut open in Fortitude Tree King's waist, and he was almost cut in half. The energy continued to destroy the inside of the body through the wound, and the wound continued to expand. The space around Fortitude Tree King trembled, and he suddenly broke the control of the force field. He covered the wound on his waist and hurriedly turned around to block Herberlin's charge. The force was transmitted to his arm through the colliding weapons, causing a violent vibration. A large number of parts in both parties' bodies were damaged. What a troublesome guy! Fortitude Tree King was in a stalemate with Herberlin's weapon. He glanced at Han Xiao and realized that this guy had already abandoned him and turned to face Heart Tree King. He wanted to help, but he could not get away. Although he called Herberlin a loser, he had to admit that this guy had the ability to restrain him. On the other side, Han Xiao finally got rid of the 2-on-1 situation. He chased after Heart Tree King with a mechanical army that was like a black tide. The psychic barrier clashed with the rain of light like firework. Heart Tree King slid and dodged Han Xiao's psionic slash. The world tree roots that came with his transformation were like tentacles surrounding his body, blocking the attacks from all directions. He said calmly, "I have to say that in the process of our conquest of the universe, you are almost the most troublesome super life form we have ever encountered. There are not many people who are qualified to be on par with you. Because of your existence, our huge group of foreign experts is almost useless. Otherwise, your high-level combatants would not have been able to fight against us." Han Xiao turned a deaf ear to him. He clapped his hands, and the anti-psychic device released waves of energy. The psychic barrier seemed to have been attacked by its weakness, and it exploded one after another, forcing Heart Tree King to increase his energy to stabilize his psychic power. Seeing that Han Xiao did not speak, Heart Tree King was not discouraged. He continued, "I can give you a promise. If you are willing to leave, the World Tree will not chase after you and your companions, nor will it be able to. You can leave this battle that you will definitely lose. The universe is so big and you can live anywhere. Living is more important than anything else. You haven't won yet. Don't be too confident." Han Xiao replied calmly, ignoring the pain of his brain being tortured by the mental attacks. He threw out another slash, which collided with Heart Tree King's psychic power. Heart Tree King shook his head. It's very difficult for high-level combatants to decide the direction of a universal war. Even if you can withstand the attacks of our high-level combatants time and time again, you won't be able to change the overall situation of the war. You're destined to lose. Actually, you have another choice. Why don't you join us and become a member of the World Tree and join forces with us to conquer the universe? With your ability, it's more than enough to replace the position of Fortitude Tree King. You want to instigate me? Han Xiao sneered. Putting aside whether I'm willing to become a puppet that has lost its free will, just my identity as an outsider makes it impossible for me to become the Tree King. You should keep this trick to fool others. Heart Tree King did not mind. Even if you kill me and cause our fleet in this war zone to lose the support of the World Tree, we might be able to break through your defense line in a normal battle. Is it worth it to sacrifice a large number of high-level combatants for such a small chance? Han Xiao could not be bothered to reply. He activated another army combat skill, which provided agility and long-range attack speed bonuses, making the mechanical army more agile. The continuous energy weapon beams hit the World Tree roots like a torrential rain, peeling off pieces after pieces. Seeing this, Heart Tree King did not give up and continued to use the chat tactic. You and I can't determine the winner. I've seen the battle between you and the subduing Tree King. I won't fall into the same trap. Wow, you're so good at acting. You're almost catching up to me. The corner of Han Zhao's eyes twitched. However, on second thought, he felt that what Heart Tree King said made sense. If the other party was prepared, it would not be easy to replicate the tactic used to deal with the subduing Tree King. In a normal battle, he would indeed have the upper hand. However, at the critical moment, Heart Tree King still had the choice to self-destruct or retreat to receive the protection of the fleet. The chances of killing him were very small. With a thought, Han Xiao opened the private chat channel and contacted Hela. Hela, leave the battlefield first and wait for orders by Aurora's side. Hela's tone was filled with killing intent, but it was directed at the enemy. After Aurora lost consciousness, Hela immediately entered a berserk state and started a massacre on the battlefield. She no longer sent the dead into the underworld but crushed them all into soul energy to strengthen herself. Her presence on the battlefield was extremely strong, and she had already killed 2 holy tree emissaries. The dead only had 1 soul. If they were sent into the underworld as heroic spirits, they would not be able to trigger the rapid growth characteristic of the power of the dead. The galactic battlefield was like a meat grinder. Hela followed Han Zhao's philosophy most of the time and sent the soldiers sacrificed by the 3 universal civilizations into the underworld. Only a few times would she use them to strengthen herself. Even so, due to the huge number of people, Hela's combat strength increased day by day. Her improvement speed was astonishing, and she was completely different from before the war. Even without the characteristic of reducing her lifespan, there were not many people in the association who had the confidence to defeat her. I have a plan. Let's see if we can deal with this Tree King who knocked out Aurora. Listen to my orders. Okay. The person Hela wanted to kill the most was the Heart Tree King. Hearing that Han Xiao had a plan, she quickly regained her composure. She glanced at the wounded ancestral spirit in front of her and suppressed the killing intent in her heart. She swept up the death energy that was like a sea of blood and retreated in the direction of the 3 universal civilizations' fleet. Along the way, Hela escaped from the entanglement of the world tree experts one after another. With difficulty, she returned to the spaceship where Aurora was. In order to escape the battle, she had gained many new injuries. Although the healer had temporarily fallen, her power of the dead had an extraordinary recovery ability, and her wounds gradually healed. Suddenly, a light flashed in the cabin, and a mechanical soldier wearing the king was teleported over. It handed the item in its hand to Hela. This is... Hela looked down at the item in the mechanical soldier's hand, and a hint of surprise appeared on her usually expressionless face. She coldly glanced at the crew members around her, and seeing that no one had any strange movements, she took it in her hand. At this moment, Han Zhao's voice sounded in the private channel. I'll leave this to you for now. You've practiced it before, so you know how to use it, right? Hela said with a deep voice. What's your plan? I'll try to create an opportunity later. If it succeeds, you'll immediately use the king on that mechanical soldier to teleport over. Then, connect to your dead sea stealth and teleport to the target to use it. Han Xiao quickly explained. I understand. Hela nodded and looked at the item in her hand. It was a white crystal the size of a palm. This item was the main body of the spacetime amber. Han Xiao usually would not give this thing to others to use, but this time, he would need someone else to do it for him. Over the past few months, he had trained Hela on how to use this universal treasure in order to complement the Azure Dragon Bind and form a new tactic. After Philip's battle simulation, he realized that under most circumstances, the same life as heaven and earth could only kill the Tree King or force it to self-destruct. From the looks of it, this new tactic was the method with the highest success rate. Keeping the private channel open, Han Xiao stared at Heart Tree King, who was easily dodging the attacks of the Mech Legion, and a glint flashed across his eyes. I hope this move works. End of chapter. Chapter 1380. The battle areas of the Beyond Grade, as were scattered all over the battlefield, and they were engaged in a bloody battle. The individual strengths of both sides fell one after another, and the battle between the fleets of both sides was also intense. The World Tree Army, which was continuously supported by the Tree King Halo, continued to advance. Although the three universal civilizations were constantly providing reinforcements, the defensive line was still slowly but firmly retreating. As the battlefield situation of the fleets kept changing, the battle areas of the Beyond Grade as also changed time and time again. Ames moved through the starry sky, controlling her force field to harass the enemy or help her comrades. Her dress was stained with blood. In the battle area she was in, there were more than 10 Beyond Grade as fighting in a team battle. The association members and the direct descendants worked together to fight the enemy and had the upper hand. The force field Esper ability had the all-purpose characteristic of being able to attack and defend. Ames mainly played a control role on the battlefield, and occasionally, she would condense her force field or drag a battleship to launch an attack. The damage was not low either. She extended her hand and released the dragon's gaze on a holy tree emissary. Ames quickly scanned the battlefield and realized that the battlefield of Herberlin, Fortitude Tree King, Han Shao, and Heart Tree King had already moved very far away. The layers of battleships on the battlefield almost covered their figures. She could only see the occasional energy light that burst out, which was far more intense than here. Looks like he won't be able to kill the Tree King so quickly. Ames frowned slightly and retracted her gaze. Her body flashed past a condensed photon beam, and she raised her hand to sweep out a light green shockwave as a counterattack. In the blink of an eye, she looked at the battlefield and saw that the enemy had revealed a temporary flaw. Ames was about to call for her teammates to cooperate and create time for her to accumulate power, but at this moment, the other party threw a wave of focused fire at her. The few association members who were supposed to block in front dodged, and she had no choice but to stop the thought of accumulating power and dodge helplessly. This won't do. We can't kill the enemy. Ames glanced at the association members and shook her head. Although they had always had the upper hand, they had not been able to cause much effective damage to the enemy. Every time they wanted to take a step forward, the World Tree experts would become more and more fearless. However, the comrades of the association members would cower because of this, not wanting to get injured and take the hit head-on, causing them to lose the opportunity to expand their advantage time and time again. The temporary loss of the healer had a huge impact on the Beyond Grade A battle. Most of the association members no longer had the mentality to risk their lives like last time, and they were unwilling to get injured. Their combat style suddenly became conservative, and the World Tree experts became more and more ferocious. Ames heard from the channel that many association members were dissatisfied with Han Zhao's attack plan this time. At the beginning, the plan was to quickly get rid of the Tree King to reduce the disadvantage of the head-on battle, but now both sides were in a stalemate. Black Star had not completed his goal, and Aurora had been temporarily knocked out, causing many Beyond Grade as to be sacrificed. In their eyes, the plan had failed, and they would only lose money. Furthermore, after fighting for so long, the main battlefield was already in a precarious situation. Even if they killed the Tree King now, they might not be able to reverse the situation. Therefore, in the eyes of many association members, the sacrifice of this attack plan was meaningless. Instead, many people lost the one-time opportunity to revive in the sanctum, so they were quite resentful. The members of the Beyond Grade A Association were all prepared for the worst. Currently, they still believed that the sanctum revival could only be used once, and they did not take Han Zhao's words of convincing the revivers seriously. Many people already had the intention to retreat, but they could not leave the battle for the time being. They could only protect themselves and were not willing to pay the price to kill their opponent. This conservative mentality affected their combat strength, and Ames had no choice but to cooperate with her teammate. She had no intention of charging into the enemy's group alone. At this moment, one of the Holy Tree emissaries suddenly paused, as if the damage had reached its limit. His body stiffened, revealing an obvious flaw. Chance. Ames and her teammates immediately changed their target and focused all their attacks on this person. All kinds of abilities shattered the defensive shield that the other party had hastily constructed and landed on his body. Blood splattered everywhere, instantly severely injuring him. Just as everyone was about to take the opportunity to chase after and kill an enemy, the other World Tree experts suddenly erupted with their full strength, bringing with them abundant energy as they blasted toward the front of this heavily injured teammate, trying to force them to retreat like the previous few times. Facing the powerful attacks, the association members hesitated and retreated. They did not face them head-on. It was not that they could not withstand the attacks, but they were not willing to. They would rather give up this opportunity than get injured. Seeing this, Ames was a little helpless. This had already happened several times. Due to the retreat of the association members, they had missed many opportunities. However, at this moment, a determined voice suddenly sounded in the channel. "Cover me!" One of the direct descendants' teammates suddenly charged forward instead of retreating, facing this wave of attacks head-on. The scene was like a surfer charging toward a tsunami. The shield on his body was instantly torn apart by the combined attacks of multiple beyond grade and wounds appeared on his body. Everyone was shocked. They did not have the time to think about anything else and quickly stopped, using long-range attacks to cover this teammate. He ignored the injuries on his body and forcefully passed through the attack wave, charging resolutely and decisively toward the heavily injured World Tree expert. His pugilist flames were all condensed on his body, completely ignoring the enemy teammates who were rushing over. Bang! The two figures collided. Seeing that the enemy was charging over, the heavily injured World Tree beyond Grade A activated self-destruction without hesitation. Ames and the others only had time to see this direct beyond Grade A's figure without any intention of retreating. The next moment, their vision was covered by a vast expanse of white. Boom! A strong light burst forth, and a huge energy cluster rose. Before the light disappeared, the surrounding World Tree experts were still releasing attacks toward the self-destruction area. Everyone hurriedly retreated a distance away. After the energy of the explosion was released, they looked at the area again. There were only incomplete corpses left. "He's gone." Everyone had complicated expressions. The direct beyond grade as who died in battle were not revivers. They knew that there was only one chance for the Sanctum revival, but they still sacrificed their lives without hesitation in order to seize the opportunity. This was something that they would never be able to do. These direct members who served the civilization had a purer attitude toward this war than they did. They were not afraid of death. Ames shook her head. She knew that she was not that great, and she did not want to be great. Time quickly passed in the intense battle. In the battlefield filled with countless mechanical fragments, Han Shao and Heart Tree King had been fighting for a long time. Both sides had consumed a certain amount of energy. In comparison, Heart Tree King's consumption was greater. This was not only because of Han Zhao's energy rank suppression, but also because of his class. After all, mental attacks were ineffective against mechanical soldiers, and Han Zhao's main body was not afraid of his mental attacks. Only psychic attacks with mediocre physical attacks could be effective. This meant that Heart Tree King was destined to be at a disadvantage when facing Han Shao. The green light on Heart Tree King's body dimmed a lot, and more than half of the World Tree roots brought about by his transformation had been destroyed. His condition was far worse than before the battle, and his movements were slightly sluggish. After using psychokinesis to block the firepower of another mechanical army, Heart Tree King once again sent a mental message to Han Xiao and said calmly, "Don't worry. Do you see that? Your defeat is set. Even if you kill me, you won't be able to salvage the situation." Hearing this, Han Xiao looked at the battle situation and could not help but cluck his tongue. The World Tree Army in this war zone continued to advance. They had already broken through the defense zone and killed their way through a few battle lines, forming an irreversible situation. There was at least an 80 to 90% chance of breaking through the interception circle and turning this place into a breakthrough point for the entire battle. In a war of hundreds of billions, the victory of high-level combatants could no longer reverse this situation. When we reach your territory, the Mother Tree will enjoy your world inch by inch. You won't have any chance. Do you want to reconsider my previous suggestion? Heart Tree King continued to bewitch him. Han Xiao did not say anything. He turned around and slashed at him as a response. Heart Tree King hurriedly dodged, but he was still grazed by the psionic energy. The psychic barrier shattered, and another world tree root broke. Hee, looks like you're very determined, Heart Tree King smiled on the surface, but his heart was filled with fear. He already had the intention to retreat. After this round of battle, he realized that he really could not beat this outsider. Just the large number of powerful apostle weapons was enough to make him suffer, and the injuries in his body were burning. If this continues, I'm afraid I'll really die here. The other Beyond Grade as will probably be free soon. It's time to retreat, Heart Tree King thought to himself. Many of the World Tree experts had already been sacrificed because the other party had more Beyond Grade as present. Heart Tree King knew that the casualties on his side would only snowball. Before long, other Beyond Grade as would come to help this outsider deal with him. At that time, it would be difficult for him to leave. Although he was prepared to die here when he set off, the exchange tactic had already taken effect. There was no need to continue fighting here. It was best if he could save his life. After making up his mind, Heart Tree King stopped bombarding him with chat streams and immediately changed his strategy. He tried to break out of the encirclement and retreat, trying to shake off the encirclement and entanglement of Han Zhao's mechanical army and return to the fleet to receive protection. Sensing the change in Heart Tree King's movements, Han Zhao's eyes flickered. He finally wants to run. It seems like he's exhausted enough. We can carry out the plan. Han Xiao immediately gave a direct order to Zhang Dojining. The mechanical army immediately chased after him and guided Heart Tree King's movements by adjusting the weakness of the encirclement. At the same time, he took the initiative to send a message to Heart Tree King. "You'll die here today." This time, it was Heart Tree King who turned a deaf ear. He focused on avoiding the focus fire of the mechanical army and quickly found a weakness to break out of the encirclement. After Han Xiao shouted, he stared at the changes in the formation. Seeing that Heart Tree King was slowly forced to a suitable position, mechanical force flashed all over his body. Buzz! A Lord's avatar wrapped in mechanical force suddenly shot out from the mechanical deity and flew toward Heart Tree King, emitting the shocking energy of a peak Beyond Grade A Super. Sensing the incoming danger, Heart Tree King suddenly turned his head, condensed his psychic power, and swept it at the Lord's avatar. If he hit it, he would definitely be able to send it flying. However, at this moment, a golden energy suddenly gushed out from the Lord's avatar's body. It was as though he had turned into an indomitable golden chariot that instantly crushed the psychic power. He was not affected at all and locked onto Heart Tree King as he charged forward. His speed seemed to be endless. Heart Tree King was a little surprised. He controlled the last world tree root to smash it over, intending to stop it. However, it was knocked away by the Lord's avatar, and it could not even slow it down. Seeing this, Han Xiao, who was still inside the mechanical deity, could not help but clench his fist. His palms were sweating. His main body was right in front of him, but he had used Lord's descent. Naturally, it was to capture Heart Tree King alive. For this, he did not hesitate to activate two character summon cards, Yin Ying's Comet Gliding, and Ulu's Golden Treasure Shipram. The former gave him endless acceleration, while the latter gave him an uncontrollable super armor state during the charging process. Success or failure depended on this. Han Xiao was betting that Heart Tree King would not self-destruct before he got close. Heart Tree King's warning signs became more and more obvious, and he hurriedly retreated. However, the Lord's avatar's charging speed became faster and faster, and with the mechanical army around him restraining him, the distance between the two sides rapidly shortened. In the blink of an eye, there was only a small distance left. Seeing the Lord's avatar rapidly enlarging in his vision, thoughts flashed through Heart Tree King's mind one after another, and the thought of self-destruction immediately surfaced in his mind. However, he had a lot of things to think about. He tried to figure out what Han Xiao meant, and in a hurry, he did not immediately make up his mind like the simple-minded subduing Tree King. However, it was during this moment of hesitation that the Sovereign's avatar, which was wrapped in golden energy, crashed into him and leaped into his arms. His biochemical muscles instantly swelled. Heart Tree King felt a strong force wrap around his body. Not only was he unable to move, but even the cells in his body were suppressed. He was shocked. Was this a pugilist's forceful control technique? It hit. Han Xiao clenched his fists in excitement. In order to complement this move, he had specially modified a batch of Lord's avatar bodies that specialized in close combat over the past few months. They could withstand his strength and endurance attributes to the maximum, allowing Azure Dragon Bind it to unleash even greater power. Heart Tree King's strength and endurance were far inferior to a pugilist. After the forceful control, he would not be able to break free so quickly. Just as Heart Tree King was hit, the surrounding mechanical troops were already prepared. They released force fields to envelop him and superimposed more control method. Hela! Han Xiao shouted. At this moment, a beam of light flashed through the mechanical army not far away from Heart Tree King. Hela's figure suddenly appeared beside an apostle weapon that was secretly carrying a throne. The bright red Dead Sea instantly spread out. The next moment, Hela's body sank into the Dead Sea and appeared beside Heart Tree King in the blink of an eye. She held the spacetime amber in her hand and pressed it toward Heart Tree King. The spacetime amber flashed, and the frozen spacetime quickly expanded, enveloping the immobile Heart Tree King and the Lord's avatar. Heart Tree King's eyes widened, but he could not even speak. His encounter was transmitted through the mental network. The surrounding fleets immediately turned their cannons and fired at him. The World Tree experts scattered everywhere were shocked. At the same time, they retreated and charged in the direction of the Heart Tree King. *T. Fortitude Tree King's heart skipped a beat. He could not be bothered to deal with the enemy and turned around to support Heart Tree King. However, Herberlin shattered a large portion of the thrusters on his back. Han Xiao had already consciously distanced himself from the battlefield, leaving Heart Tree King alone. No World Tree beyond grade as could arrive quickly. Under the furious, shocked, and disbelieving gazes, a new spacetime amber ball was formed, freezing Heart Tree King's shocked expression. Hela stared at Heart Tree King, whose face was filled with shock, and a cold glint flashed in her eyes. "Since you hurt my sister, you'll stay here forever. Thank you, Alliance Leader 1000 Fantasy, for the 120,000 reward. Recently, there was a web author without a holiday event. The reward was not bad. Those who are interested can take a look." End of chapter. Chapter 1381. Heart Tree King was locked in a strange position by the Lord's avatar and trapped in the spacetime amber. At this moment, time seemed to have stopped, and this world-famous painting landed in the eyes of all the beyond grade as on both sides. Intense joy gushed out from the eyes of the Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations like a flash flood. Black Star succeeded. Beautiful. That Tree King didn't have the time to self-destruct. Full support. Don't let those enemies harass Black Star. The morale of a large number of Beyond Grade as was greatly boosted. They swept away the depression of losing their healer and launched ferocious attacks at the World Tree experts who were in a hurry to leave the battle. The emotions of all the World Tree experts were the opposite. Their expressions changed rapidly, and they were filled with shock and anger. They did not care about fighting with their opponents and rushed toward Han Shao like crazy, trying to snatch Heart Tree King back. However, the moment Han Shao succeeded, he controlled the mechanical deity to move again. He grabbed the spacetime amber ball and swallowed it into his body. At the same time, he also retrieved the spacetime amber in Hela's hand. Without another word, he used the mechanical army as a shield to block the firepower of the World Tree Fleet. He then flew in the opposite direction at full speed, no longer fighting. His goal was to retreat from the battlefield. In order to lure the three universal civilizations to send out their high-level combatants, Heart Tree King naturally would not stand deep into the World Tree Fleet. The battle area was at the periphery of the fleet. Even if the World Tree Fleet wanted to intercept Han Shao, it would be too late. Han Shao paid the price of mechanical soldiers and quickly entered the chaotic area in the center of the battlefield. The many World Tree experts could not care less. They surrounded Han Shao in batches, trying to stop him from returning. However, the Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations who were chasing after him covered for Han Shao, restraining one opponent after another. During the battle, the energy wheels kept lighting up around Han Shao, sweeping out a path. Fortitude Tree King fought with Herberlin again, and the violent vibrations were transmitted through his body. He also wanted to support Heart Tree King, but he could not shake off Herberlin's entanglement. He could not increase his speed at all, and he could only watch as Han Zhao's figure went further and further away. He was so angry that his energy core was about to overload. F***ck, idiot! Even the subduing Tree King is smarter than you. Fortitude Tree King was furious. The exchange strategy had clearly been a great success, and he could have just retreated now. At the very least, he could have self-destructed and died. He did not expect to fall at the last moment. It was supposed to be a great victory without many losses, but now it had become a real exchange. He had already cursed the 18 generations of Heart Tree King's ancestors in his heart. Just because he had thought too much, Heart Tree King did not self-destruct and was directly captured. This was a fatal mistake that even the subduing Tree King did not make. It was simply the shame of the Tree Kings. The rest could only wait for the ancestral Tree King to decide. Seeing that Han Shao had pierced through the obstacles and was about to return to the three universal civilizations' fleet, Fortitude Tree King knew that he could not do anything. His eyes flashed, and he spoke with a deep voice in the mental network. Everyone, don't chase after them. Retreat. Don't fight. Currently, Heart Tree King had been captured alive, and the only one in charge was Fortitude Tree King. He took over the leadership without hesitation and ordered all the World Tree Beyond Grade as to retreat. Without a Tree King, he was worried that Han Shao would continue to seal more experts, so he chose to give up and order everyone to leave the battle. When the many World Tree experts heard the order, their bodies paused in their pursuit. They looked at Han Zhao's shrinking figure unwillingly, but they still chose to follow Fortitude Tree King's orders and stopped chasing. While dealing with the Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations, they quickly retreated to the World Tree Fleet. The battleships in the distance also provided long-range support, helping them get rid of their opponent. The Beyond Grade as of the three universal civilizations did not pursue deeply. They took advantage of the victory and chased after them for a while, killing a few World Tree experts who had exposed their flaws because they changed their targets at the last minute. Then, they retreated under the lead of the association members, not daring to follow the remaining World Tree experts into the fleet. If that happened, they would be the ones in danger. Seeing this, Herberlin did not dare to continue fighting alone. He fought with fortitude Tree King for a few times and gradually moved the battlefield to meet up with his companions, completing his escape from the battle. His eyes that flickered with mechanical force locked onto Fortitude Tree King, filled with killing intent, as though he was saying, "I'll teach you a lesson the next time we meet." Fortitude Tree King looked at this acquaintance deeply, and did not say anything. He retreated with the World Tree experts and sank into the World Tree fleet. Starships moved over one after another, blocking Herberlin and the others' vision. They could no longer see the figures of the World Tree experts. As the remaining World Tree beyond grade as retreated, the battle between the high-level combatants of both sides came to an end. The association members and the direct descendants did not stay on the battlefield. They passed through the battlefield and returned to the three universal civilizations' fleet. Everyone put away their weapons and returned to the temporary command ship at the back of the battlefield. As soon as they walked into the command room, they saw that Han Shao, Hela, and the others were already there. The remote projections of Simon and the other commanders were also gathered there. They were pointing at Heart Tree King's spacetime amber and talking. "Black Star, our front line of defense can't hold on any longer. The other war zones are also showing signs of collapse. The World Tree will definitely break through the interception circle. We are mobilizing our troops to retreat, but this is not your problem. You did well. At least you caught a Tree King." Simon's tone was low. "If only I had gotten rid of the Tree King halo earlier." Han Shao exhaled. "Although this will be helpful, from the looks of the World Tree's attack, this can only delay the time for them to break through the interception circle. At most, the first to fall will not be this war zone but the other defense lines." Simon shook his head. His tone was somewhat helpless, but he was not angry. After a month of battle, the entire command level was mentally prepared for the interception circle to be broken. They had made a plan, and when it really happened, they would not be incompetent and furious. "What do we do next?" "There's no need for you to continue fighting. Return to the main base first, and we will begin to evacuate in batches. The World Tree's goal is not only to break through the interception circle, but also to clean up our troop. Since the defense line has been broken, the trend will be difficult to reverse. There's no need to fight them head-on anymore. We will use the various fortifications built in the strategic depths of the rear over the past year to cover and harass them. We will try our best to restrict their speed. You guys can decide on the military." Han Shao waved his hand. Simon nodded and turned to look at the beyond grade, as who were almost all injured. He changed the topic and said, "Everyone, please calculate the losses. We need accurate data." Hearing this, the beyond grade as sized each other up and began to take names. The number of people had decreased by a lot compared to when they first joined the battle. Many of them had died in the intense battle, and most of them were direct beyond grade as. There were also some revivers, and the association members had the fewest casualties. Because there were many more experts participating in the battle this time, and they had the advantage in numbers, the number of World Tree experts was even higher. There were only 20 to 30% of the survivors, and the three universal civilizations were far from being as tragic. However, the World Tree did not take out all of its high-level combatants. Ignoring the difference in combat strength, just the number of combatants was only about 1/5 to 1/4 of the total. However, although they had the advantage in terms of battle losses, it was much worse than the previous shocking battle result. More familiar faces disappeared, and the beyond grade as present could not bring themselves to feel emotional. They were still immersed in the battle just now and could not extricate themselves. They still had lingering fear in their hearts, and they only felt that they had survived a calamity. The losses this time are not small, Sun Hunter muttered. Sun Hunter muttered. I think we should have retreated when Aurora was knocked down. Hearing his soft words, many beyond grade as nodded in agreement. They glanced at Han Shao with complicated emotions. There was helplessness and understanding, as well as dissatisfaction and resentment. If they did not catch the Heart Tree King this time, it would be a huge loss. However, at least they had gained something and did not return empty-handed. Although many beyond grade as still felt that they had suffered a loss, looking at the Heart Tree King in the amber, they felt more or less comforted. Although they were unhappy, they could not say anything. After all, Han Shao had caught a Tree King and made a contribution. At most, they felt that it was not worth it to exchange so many people for one opponent. Han Shao casually glanced at them and knew what they were thinking. However, he had no intention of explaining. He had originally wanted to see if he could manipulate it and watch the revivers die in battle. Now that Aurora had fallen, although the battle losses had increased, it made it easier for him to move. He did not need to make Aurora make a mistake like in the plan. These dead revivers were the best evidence to prove the truth of the Sanctum revival. He was not sad at all. Instead, he was relieved. If not a few revivers had died in this wave, it would have been troublesome. After hearing the damage statistics of the Beyond grade Simon sighed and shook his head. The direct descendants have suffered heavy casualties. No matter what, most of the victims still have a chance to revive in the Sanctum. Thank you for your hard work. Everyone was in a bad mood and could not be bothered with him. They turned to look at Hela. What they were most concerned about was Aurora's condition. How's your sister now? The seal is a little thicker than before. It will take time to unseal it. Everyone, there's no time to lose. Let's rest for a while and let her wake up as soon as possible, Hela said with a deep voice. That's right. Those with psychic abilities, come out. While we're retreating, wake up Aurora first. Kasui stepped out of the crowd and released his psychic energy into Aurora's brain. He began to bombard the purple crystal that sealed her mind. Many psychics, mages, and psychic espers walked out and cooperated with each other to speed up the progress. With so many people working together, the mind seal was slowly thinning at a speed visible to the naked eye. At this rate, it would be completely unsealed in a few hours. Seeing this, Han Shao turned to look at the Heart Tree King in the amber. He remembered that the Heart Tree King had used a universal treasure that looked like a leaf to activate the illusory heart lock. That was probably one of the strange items that grew in the World Tree, and it was hidden in the Heart Tree King's body. However, Han Shao had no intention of unsealing the amber in the short term, so he temporarily suppressed his curiosity. World Tree Territory, Tree King Palace. The executive officers who did not participate in the battle also learned about the situation from the mental network. Their faces were filled with shock and bewilderment. They were prepared for the Heart Tree King to die in battle, but they did not expect him to be captured alive by the enemy using such a strange sealing method. They were all terrified. The Fortitude Tree King sat on the throne and slowly opened his eyes. He removed the Lord's Descent state, and a rare look of anger appeared on his face. He slammed the armrest of the throne heavily. Humph, Heart Tree King, you're really useless. As soon as he said that, the roots on the two thrones beside him suddenly intertwined, and two figures with different appearances appeared. Hee, looks like the enemy this time is indeed very troublesome. Of the 5 Tree Kings, 1 is dead and 1 is captured. Now, only 3 of them have the ability to fight. You're right, the Heart Tree King and the Subduing Tree King are both useless. One of them turned around and sneered. However, you're not any better. Your Lord's avatar was clearly present, but you didn't save the Heart Tree King. The Fortitude Tree King glanced at him coldly and snorted. Secret Tree King, I can't be bothered to argue with you, but you'd better watch your words. The Secret Tree King did not mind. He did not take the Fortitude Tree King seriously at all. Among the 5 Tree Kings, other than the Ancestral Tree King, He did not like anyone else. Humph, I can't be bothered to argue with you. The Fortitude Tree King turned to look at the Ancestral Tree King in the middle and asked, "What do you think we should do next?" The Ancestral Tree King's aura was the opposite of the other 4 Tree Kings. He was like an ordinary person who lacked a sense of presence. Be it his appearance or body shape, there was nothing special about him. If one did not pay attention, they might subconsciously ignore him. Hearing the question, the Ancestral Tree King was expressionless. "I've already tried. The Heart Tree King is completely isolated from the outside world, and the Mother Tree can't take back his Tree King crown. This means that before he is unsealed, I can't remove his position and replace him with a new Tree King. Therefore, we have to try to save him. At the very least, we have to take back his Tree King crown. Otherwise, we won't be able to let the Tree God descend completely." Hearing this, the expressions of the Fortitude Tree King and the Secret Tree King became serious. They had originally thought that the Heart Tree King would be able to exchange for a large number of high-level combatants by himself. Although he had become a real exchange, the enemy would still be at a disadvantage. However, if they could not take back the Tree King crown, it would be troublesome. The identities of the Tree Kings all came from the Tree King crown. This was a special ability given by the Mother Tree. Just like the Apostle weapons, there were only 5 of them. They had to be of 5 different supersystems. Other than the Ancestral Tree King occupying one all year round, the other 4 Tree King crowns had changed over the years. Only by gathering all 5 crowns would they be able to cast the complete Tree God's descent. This was their trump card. "Then what should we do?" the Fortitude Tree King asked. The Ancestral Tree King casually said, "There's no need to worry for the time being. The other party's civilization has yet to display the ability to use the Tree God's descent. The Heart Tree King is only sealed and is not in any danger. We have 2 plans now. One is to wait. The enemy might be interested in studying the Tree King. As long as we undo that special seal, I can take back the Tree King crown. The second is to send someone to rescue him. Although the connection between the Mother Tree and him has been cut off, the direction of the broken connection can still point to his location. We can organize high-level combatants to snatch him back. Then, let's wait and see when these enemies can't hold back." The Fortitude Tree King snorted. That's what I meant too." The Ancestral Tree King nodded and continued. "Although we have broken through the enemy's interception circle, we still need to rush to the enemy's territory. We can just let the fleet carry out the mission of rushing. We don't need high-level combatants, so there won't be any chance to make a move. Furthermore, although we know the direction, the journey is unknown. We don't know how long it will take to reach the enemy's territory. It could be a few years or it could be decades. However, based on the enemy's reaction, it shouldn't be too far away." The other 2 nodded silently. Also, the Heart Tree King is gone. Someone needs to continue presiding over the daily affairs here. The Ancestral Tree King turned to look at the Fortitude Tree King and slowly said, "You'll do it." The Fortitude Tree King's face fell. Who knew how many years it would take for the fleet to reach the enemy's territory? He did not want to appear all the time. He wanted to slack off, but he did not dare to go against the Ancestral Tree King, so he could only agree. After casually giving a few instructions, the Ancestral Tree King's figure quickly faded and returned to the Mother Tree. The Secret Tree King glanced at the Fortitude Tree King gloatingly and also removed his appearance. Soon, only the Fortitude Tree King was left on the throne. "You want me to work? No way." The Fortitude Tree King snorted. He rolled his eyes and came up with a plan. "Right, the seed of the Subduing Tree King should be almost mature. When he revives, I can transfer this job to the Subduing Tree King. Anyway, that Iron Skull is hard-working enough and is willing to do this hard work. I can continue to slack off." With this thought in mind, the Fortitude Tree King's heart itched. He could not wait for the subduing Tree King to come back to life in front of him. He could not help but stand up and leave the palace. He inherited the glorious tradition of the Heart Tree King and went out to water the subduing Tree King. Chapter 1382. Han Shao and the others retreated from the battlefield and returned to the main base of the intercepting circle. The World Tree Army had yet to arrive, so they were not affected by the flames of war. The rear troops of the three universal civilizations and the various large organizations had already formed a long line. They entered different multidimensional sky-opening transportation devices and retreated to the explored universe. The group boarded a retreating main ship and waited for their turn while paying attention to the real-time surveillance of the battlefield. On the screen, the three universal civilizations had already begun to withdraw their forces and stop their losses. The front line formed by the starships retreated like a flood. Kant watched for a while and shook his head. It seems like the three universal civilizations have completely decided to give up on the intercepting circle. It's useless to fight to the death. Of course, we have to retreat, Manison said calmly. But if we retreat, we won't be able to stop the World Tree from approaching our territory. Sooner or later, we'll have to fight on our own territory. Claudia shook his head. Ever since Reeve and the others recovered, he had become more talkative. He rarely displayed the cold and aloof attitude he used to have in the past. A group of people casually chatted about the situation of the battle, calming their emotions from the bloody battle just now. Han Shao did not join their conversation. He watched from the side as the psychic ability users unsealed Aurora. After watching for a while, he suddenly noticed that quite a few beyond grade as were sweating. He could not help but ask, "What's going on?" He could not help but ask, "How's the progress now?" "Something strange." Kasuyi pinched his forehead and said in a surprised tone, "We've already weakened the seal by more than 95%, leaving only the last thin layer. However, we've encountered an unprecedented resistance. The last bit of the seal crystal wall suddenly became indestructible, as if there's an endless force supporting its existence." "There's such a thing?" Han Shao raised his brows and immediately thought of the characteristics of illusion, lock of the heart. It seemed like the target of this move would fall into a dream weaved by desire. The more serious it was, the stronger the seal would be. He carefully looked at Aurora. As the layers of seals were broken, her expression was no longer blank. At this moment, her eyes were closed and her brows were tightly knitted, revealing a slight pained expression. It was as if she was saying, "Don't disturb me while I'm daydreaming." Could it be that his subconscious had sensed the threat of the dreamland disappearing, so he took the dreamland more seriously and took the initiative to stabilize the seal to resist the one who unsealed it? What was she dreaming about that made this woman wish she could sleep forever and never wake up? The corner of Han Zhao's mouth twitched. He helplessly retracted his gaze and patted Kasuyi. "Then, can you lift the seal or not?" "Don't worry about that. Although the seal barrier is much stronger, with so many of us working together, we will be able to wear it down sooner or later." Kasuyi did not even turn his head. Han Shao could only trust him and wait patiently at the side. After a while, Kasuyi and his group suddenly breathed a sigh of relief and were about to announce that they had succeeded. But before they could say anything, Aurora suddenly opened her eyes and woke up from her coma. She let out a mournful cry. "No." The sharp shout gave everyone a fright. Even the beyond grade, as who were analyzing the situation not far away, stopped chatting and looked over in surprise. It was originally a happy thing that the wet nurse had woken up, but everyone was so frightened by this shout that their hearts twitched and their heads were filled with confusion. Seeing the pairs of shocked eyes staring at her, Aurora suddenly came back to her senses and hurriedly shut her mouth. However, her expression was still a little absent-minded, as if she had not adapted to the feeling of leaving the dream and was still trying to distinguish whether this was reality or an illusion. However, as her senses and memories gradually adjusted, Aurora slowly confirmed that she had really woken up this time. At this time, Han Xiao walked out of the crowd and stood in front of Aurora. He raised his hand and touched her head. "Your mind's seal has been lifted. How do you feel?" Aurora looked up at Han Xiao, and her delicate face suddenly turned red. She quickly turned her head to the side, avoided his gaze, and stammered, "I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you? What problem can I have?" Han Xiao saw her strange expression and could not help but be curious. "What did you dream of in the seal?" Aurora was speechless and hesitated, as if she did not want to say it. At this time, Gila walked over, raised her hand and patted her head. Her tone was dissatisfied. "I'm asking you a question. What did you dream of? Why are you not even open your memories to me?" "Don't ask. It's nothing important anyway." Aurora glanced at Hela, then looked away in shock. She remembered the experience in the dream again, and her face turned even redder, as if it was about to bleed. Seeing her strange behavior, Han Xiao and Hela looked at each other in surprise. However, since Aurora did not want to say it, they could not be bothered to force her. Anyway, she was already awake, so there was no need to delve into those details. Maybe it was a secret in her heart that was not convenient to say. Han Xiao poked Aurora with a needle and checked her status. Seeing that Aurora's attributes had returned to normal, he did not dwell on Aurora's dream anymore. Seeing this, everyone came forward and asked about her well-being, squeezing Han Xiao and Hela to the side. Aurora's mood gradually returned to normal, but she still did not dare to look at Han Xiao. Suddenly, she thought of something and asked with a serious face, "Since you are all here, is the battle over? How are the casualties?" As soon as her voice fell, everyone's expression stiffened slightly, and they sighed. The atmosphere quickly became gloomy, and they talked about the battle after she fainted. Hearing about the casualties this time, Aurora was shocked, and then she felt a little guilty and lost. Sorry, I was careless and fell into the enemy's trap. I could not be of use and more people were sacrificed. It's not your fault. It's all the enemy's doing. You're just a victim." Han Xiao rubbed her head, and her soft blonde hair slid through his palm. "But if that enemy uses this move again, I'll—" Han Xiao waved his hand and interrupted her. He smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. I've already locked the Tree King who attacked you in amber. He won't threaten you anymore. You're still so good to me." Cough cough. Aurora subconsciously opened her mouth, but halfway through, she suddenly remembered that this was not a dream. She quickly shut her mouth, lowered her head, and coughed to hide the abnormal emotions in her eyes. However, no one cared about her expression and sighed. "It's all thanks to Black Star capturing that Tree King. Otherwise, if they sealed Aurora again in the next battle, we would have suffered heavy casualties like today." Milizaus shook his head. Gyuzer sighed softly. "From this point of view, it's already not bad that Black Star got rid of the future trouble this time. It's just a pity for those comrades who sacrifice themselves. You can't say that. Since the enemy has this method, they will use it sooner or later. Therefore, it's inevitable that we will suffer casualties. When the enemy first appeared and used this move, Black Star seized the opportunity to capture him. He's already trying his best to minimize losses in the future. His contribution is huge," Biger immediately said. Hearing this, everyone thought for a while and felt that it made sense. This was the enemy's trump card, and Black Star could not have stopped the enemy from using it in advance. He could not blame Black Star, and eliminating this hidden danger the first time was already the best result. While everyone was sighing, Ames walked forward and patted Aurora's head. She heaved a sigh of relief and smiled. "It's good that you're fine. This is more important than anything." "Teacher, I'm sorry." Aurora lowered her head timidly. Her face was red, and her face was filled with guilt. She did not dare to look up. Ames misunderstood and comforted her. "It's fine, don't blame yourself. Although you didn't use your ability to protect me, it's not your fault. Aren't I fine?" Hearing this, Aurora became even more embarrassed. She clasped her hands together and buried her head even deeper. She almost wanted to bury her head into the deep ravine in front of her chest like an ostrich. At this moment, it was finally their turn to leave, and everyone stopped chatting. The spaceship entered the multi-dimensional sky-opening transportation device with the fleet, and the two huge mechanical rings began to rotate. The light connected and flickered, sending everyone back to the flickering world. After Han Xiao and the others retreated from the battlefield, the situation developed just as Simon had said. The defensive lines of the war zones were broken one after another, and the World Tree Army marched in from various regions and spread out rapidly. A snowball-like vicious cycle occurred, and the intercepting circle gradually became riddled with holes as if it was being eroded. Because the interception circle was no longer able to turn the situation around, the three universal civilizations did not continue to recruit beyond grade as into the battle and no longer insisted on a head-on confrontation. They had been retracting their troops and equipment to recover their costs so that they would not be completely wiped out by the World Tree Fleet. This process lasted for about 10 days before the World Tree Army completely broke through the interception circle. The three universal civilizations also withdrew all the fleets and equipment that should be withdrawn, and the fortifications that could not be taken away were destroyed on the spot. The interception circle that had been built for a year was only left with countless metal trash floating in the universe, like a man-made meteorite belt. In the explored universe, the upper echelons of the three universal civilizations and the command center held a follow-up battle meeting after the interception circle disappeared. Among all the beyond grade as, Han Xiao was the only representative. In the huge conference room, the leaders of the three universal civilizations listened to the military report with tense faces. As the commander-in-chief of the interception circle, Simon was reading out the strategic analysis. The interception circle has been dismantled. We have lost the biggest barrier to stop the World Tree from advancing. The war has entered a new stage. In the past year, we have sent out engineering teams to move from the interception circle toward the flickering world. Along the way, we have been setting up traps and fortifications for this day. When the World Tree advances toward our territory and enters the vast strategic area, we can harass and stop them. Although we can't stop them from advancing, we can at least slow them down. At this moment, Marbruce interrupted him and tapped on the table. This is treating the symptoms but not the root cause. Can you think of a way to build another interception circle? Hearing this, Simon shook his head and sighed. With all due respect, before we find the main body of the World Tree, all tactics are only treating the symptoms. Building another interception circle will require a large amount of resources. I believe that with this experience, the World Tree will use the same method to attack next time. Our troops will once again suffer a large loss, which is exactly what the other party wants. Furthermore, the location is also a problem. Most of the areas in this strategic area are places that we have never set foot in before. We can't go there at will. The engineering team that set off first can only build a new interception circle a year away from the World Tree. Time is too tight. If we let a new batch of engineering teams set off from the border of the flickering world, we will have enough time to build an interception circle. However what? Lewis asked. Simon frowned and told the truth. The General Staff does not agree with this plan. Through the speed and drifting time of the Kundi race survivors, we have already calculated the approximate range of the World Tree from us. With their sailing speed, it will take them about 11 years to reach our territory. Under our obstruction and delay, this number will be extended, but not for long. The ethereal Pope immediately questioned. 11 years. That's enough to build a stronger interception circle. What's wrong with that? It can be done, but the General Staff feels that it's better to use destructive methods to develop the borders of the flickering world that have yet to be fully explored, squeeze out the resources of the planets in these areas, and then turn at least 5 star clusters into desolate universe belt. We won't leave a single hair for the world tree and build a defense line here. After all, this is our home ground. This will not only make it convenient for the rear to support us, but it will also greatly reduce the area of the defense line and save on the consumption of excess troop. Furthermore, the battlefield will be close to our home, and it will also stimulate the resistance of the entire universe. If we set up a new interception circle in an unexplored area that is countless distances away, it will consume too much of our troop. We will definitely be dragged into the war of attrition that the World Tree is good at, which will be even more disadvantageous. Simon explained with a deep voice. Hearing this, the upper echelons present whispered to each other, discussing the pros and cons of this plan. The leaders of the 3 universal civilizations pondered. After a while, they turned to Han Shao and asked, "Black Star, what do you think?" Han Shao shook his head and said, "I don't have much of an opinion, but the scorched earth method is very necessary. Instead of leaving those planets for the World Tree to devour, we might as well use the Planet Smasher to develop the planets at the border of the flickering world so that the enemy won't be able to replenish themselves. That way, even if they attack, we won't lose too much." He had already done what he could. Compared to the terrible start in his previous life, the current situation of the 3 universal civilizations was countless times better. In terms of war, he could not give any more suggestions. After all, the direction of the war between the 3 universal civilizations and the World Tree was completely different from his previous life. He could not be sure of the final direction of every plan. Currently, the best choice was to trust the professional military personnel. The World Tree will be able to invade the 3 universal civilizations' territory in at least 11 years. This is the final preparation period. I have to make good use of it. Han Shao exhaled, his emotions fluctuating. While the World Tree was traveling, the 3 universal civilizations most likely did not need high-level combatants to stop and harass them. This meant that the Beyond Grade as did not have to be on standby and could freely arrange their schedules. He planned to spend some time nurturing those Beyond Grade A seeds, hoping that more Beyond Grade as would be born. At the same time, he wanted Carrot to grow as soon as possible. On the other hand, he could also take the opportunity to settle down. The experience provided by the players was definitely enough for him to break through level 360 and complete his promotion within a year. The strongest time for a mechanic was not the moment they had just advanced. Only after using the power of the promotion to completely upgrade their mechanical army and mechanical equipment would a mechanic be at his peak. The final 11 years of preparation was a rare opportunity for him to digest the power of the promotion. After these 2 battles with the Tree Kings, Han Shao had already realized his current weakness. Although he could definitely win against the Heart Tree King or the Subduing Tree King in a one-on-one battle, they were all experts of the same level and had their own trump cards. It was almost impossible for him to defeat the other party quickly. Furthermore, the battlefield environment was complicated, and the mechanical army was the biggest target. There were too many interference factors that affected his combat strength. Although his energy rank was very high, he was still a peak Beyond Grade A in essence. There was no qualitative change. Only with the power of sublimation could he solve this problem. The next time we fight, I hope to give the World Tree a surprise. Han Shao narrowed his eyes. However, these thoughts only flashed through his mind before they were suppressed by him. He knew very well that the most important task now was not these plans but to wait for Oathkeeper to gather a new sanctum key and enter the sanctum again. He wanted to use the truth of the revival to strengthen the will of the entire Beyond grade as to participate in the battle. End of chapter. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.